My grandpa saved $50,000 for my education, but my parents spent it on my sister's sweet 16 in a luxury trip. I, 25, have been working at an architecture business for the past 2 years, and I need to discuss something that has been eating me alive: familial favoritism. Not just slight biases, but overt, obvious favoritism that has influenced my entire life. Let me clarify. My parents treat my younger sister, Sophia, 18F, as if she is the center of the universe, while I might as well be invisible. Have you seen the memes about the golden child versus the scapegoat? That's my life, detailed in agonizing detail. Growing up, every birthday became a reminder of this reality. On my 16th birthday, I received a used laptop that could only run basic applications. Sophia's Sweet 16 celebration included a full venue rental, a live band, and even a professional photographer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. I've always been drawn to architecture. Even as a child, I would spend hours with my construction blocks, constructing complicated structures as my parents admired Sophia's bizarre dancing movements in the living room. "Look how naturally talented she is," they'd exclaim, while my meticulously crafted structures were tossed aside without a glance. This pattern persisted through our lives. When I was in college, I took first prize in a major architectural design competition. It was a breakthrough moment in my career, the kind of triumph that leads to new opportunities. I alerted my parents about the awards event several weeks in advance, believing that this time would be different. My mother casually stated to me the morning before the ceremony that they would be unable to attend. "We have errands to run," she added, barely looking up from her phone, which was probably showing Sophia's most recent Instagram photos. I ended up asking my friend's mother to snap photos, holding back tears as I got my prize in front of a crowd of ecstatic parents. Sophia signed up for a high school dancing competition 3 months later. My parents were overjoyed when she came in second place, not first. They gave her flowers, took her out to a lavish supper, and documented everything on every social media outlet they could find. "Our talented daughter is following her dreams," they wrote. I sat at that supper, pushing food around my plate, wondering why her dreams were so much more valuable than mine. The instances are numerous. When my outdated phone eventually died, it was so old that the screen would randomly go black. I had to work additional shifts at my part-time job to save enough money for a replacement. Sophia expressed wanting the latest iPhone, and they got it for her that weekend. "She needs it for her social media presence," my mother said, as if that justified everything. But the true difference was in how they handled our mistakes. I once forgot to take out the garbage after working all night on a project. My father lectured me for 45 minutes about responsibility and how I needed to grow up and contribute to the home. But what happened when Sophia backed into our mailbox before she even had her license? They laughed it off. "Oh, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning." It cost $300 to replace the mailbox. My grandfather was not like others. He was my light of hope in this sea of favoritism. While my parents were preoccupied with Sophia's latest social media follower count, Grandpa would sit with me in his study and review my architectural sketches. He wasn't very knowledgeable about modern design ideas, but he understood passion. "One day," he said, his eyes gleaming, "I'll see your buildings on postcards, and I'll buy every single one of them." As I grew older, I spent more time at my grandparents' house. It was the only location where I could breathe freely and not have my accomplishments eclipsed by whatever Sophia had done that day. Grandma would bake cookies while Grandpa worked on my college applications. They were the first to actually notice me. When I was 22 and working my first job at an architecture firm, Grandpa summoned me for a serious chat. He brought me down in his study, the same space where he'd fostered my goals for years, and informed me that he was launching a college fund for my graduate education. He was painfully honest. I know your parents won't prioritize this, sweetie. They have their favorites, and it's not fair. But I want you to have your shot. The money was large, totaling $55,000. It was enough to give me a legitimate opportunity to pursue my master's degree without drowning in debt. When my parents found out, they barely responded. What about Sophia? She had an amazing tantrum. Why doesn't Grandpa love me as much? She cried. My parents spent hours comforting her, assuring her she was just as important and adored. Meanwhile, the first stood in the corner, convinced that I couldn't have this one item without it becoming about her. Working for an architecture firm has been my escape. I've pushed myself into my tasks, working late at the workplace and taking on extra responsibilities. My colleagues value my effort and attention to detail. Last month, I was even able to present one of my ideas to a significant client. The firm's partners were impressed. But when I sought to share this information with my parents, that's nice, honey. But did you hear about Sophia's TikTok going viral? Then everything changed. My grandparents died within months of one another. First Grandpa, then Grandma, as if they couldn't take being apart. Losing them devastated me. They were my support system, my cheerleaders, and the only people who treated me like I was important. In the midst of my sadness, I had to manage the duties they had left behind. They were highly structured, with everything clearly spelled out in their will. They left me their humble home, filled with memories and love. Then there was the college fund, Grandpa's pride and delight. I had not touched it yet, thanks to my work savings. But as graduate school applications approached, I decided to check the account. Late one night, after a particularly hard day at work, I went in to check the balance. The numbers on the screen caused my heart to stop. Instead of $55,000, there was just $5,000 remaining. I blinked. We refreshed the page, logged out and back in. The number did not change. The next morning, I went to the bank in person, trying to remain calm while I inquired about the transaction history. That's when the truth was revealed. My parents, named as secondary beneficiaries, had been steadily depleting the account for the past year. I called my mother that evening, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone. Hey, I was checking Grandpa's college fund, and most of the money's gone. Do you know what happened? There was a long delay before she spoke, her tone immediately defensive. What do you mean, it's gone? Are you sure you're looking at the right account? When I told her I'd been to the bank and knew the money had been withdrawn, she abandoned the act. We used it for Sophia's Sweet 16, she explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. You spent $50,000 on a birthday party? It wasn't just the party, she said, as if that made things better. There were a lot of expenses, the venue, the catering, the decorations. Plus, we got her a car. Then came the kicker. They had also used the money to take Sophia on a 2-week family trip to Europe. I wasn't even told about the family vacation, let alone invited. When I explained that the money was intended for my education, my mother sighed as if I was being difficult. You didn't need that money anymore. You have a job, remember? 16 only happens once. We wanted to make it special for her. I hung up the phone with my entire body numb. That night, I sat in the living room of the house my grandparents had left for me, surrounded by images and memories. It seemed like a betrayal of all they had worked for and believed in. After days of internal deliberation, I came to a decision. I hired an attorney. This is not about money anymore. It's about respect, about advocating for myself, regarding respecting my grandparents' desires. When my parents received the documents, all hell broke out. My mother called within hours, shouting about how I was ripping the family apart. Do you know how this makes us look? She insisted. My reply was straightforward. You should have thought about that before stealing $50,000. It wasn't stealing, she exclaimed. It was for the family. I advised her to contact my lawyer and hung up. The fallout was immediate. My extended family found out, of course. My mother couldn't keep it a secret, and I became public enemy number one. My aunt called to lecture me on family loyalty. My aunt told me, "You need to think about what you're doing to your mother." But I'm done thinking about everybody else. For once in my life, I'm thinking about myself. My lawyer thinks this will not be a simple process, but I am ready. My grandparents believed in me. I believed in my dreams. I refuse to let their final gift to me be spent on a 16 celebration and a car. Sophia has probably already wrecked. I will keep you updated as things progress. If anyone has dealt with toxic family dynamics like this, I'd love to learn how they addressed it. Sometimes I question whether I'm doing the right thing. But then I remember my grandfather's expression when he told me about the college fund and how delighted he was to be able to help me pursue my aspirations. I will not let them take it away. Update 1. Hi Reddit. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for your responses to my last post. Some of you really helped me realize that sticking up for myself wasn't just okay. It was important. Here's what's transpired in the 2 months since I filed legal action. The legal proceedings have been exhausting. My parents first tried to drag things out by ignoring our letters and missed deadlines. Their initial answer, through their lawyer, was almost comical. They stated that the money was a family resource and that Grandpa had vocally changed his mind before dying. When we inquired for documentation of this alleged amendment, they couldn't recall exactly when or where the conversation took place. During our first mediation session, my parents took a different approach. Dad stated they had invested the money in my future, claiming Sophia's social media presence would someday benefit the entire family. He genuinely said, with a straight face, "She's going to be an influencer, and then she can help pay for your education." The mediator's look was priceless. The real shock occurred when we uncovered more withdrawals that they had not communicated. In addition to the Sweet 16 celebration, the car, and the European holiday, they had spent thousands of dollars on a private dance instructor to help Sophia advance her career. They'd paid for a costly social media marketing course, many professional photo sessions for her Instagram, and a full gaming setup for her aspiring streaming career. My lawyer was ecstatic with these discoveries. Apparently, tracking such needless expenses strengthens our case. When confronted with these expenses, my mother attempted to justify them as investments in Sophia's future. She even brought spreadsheets to our next meeting, hoping to demonstrate how an influencer career could provide a significant family income. The judge was unimpressed, especially when my lawyer showed out that Sophia's social media following was primarily acquired through paid marketing. Using more of my college fund money, the family dynamic has shifted. Most families initially supported my parents. However, as more information became available, some people began to shift their perspective. My cousin Julia, 32F, called me privately and said she'd seen similar partiality at family gatherings for years, but never had the nerve to speak up. She's now one of my most ardent advocates, willing to testify about particular occurrences she's witnessed over the years. My Aunt Margaret, who had first lectured me on family loyalty, became strangely silent after seeing the bank statements. Mom had brought them to a family meeting with the intention of getting approval for their side of the tale, but it backfired catastrophically. The statements included not only the significant expenses, but also dozens of minor withdrawals for things like social media consultancy and brand building seminars. Last week, Margaret sent me a quick text. "Your grandpa would be proud of you standing up for yourself." Coming from her, it meant everything. Sophia's behavior has undergone the most dramatic changes. When she realized her automobile could be seized as part of the settlement, she launched a massive social media campaign against me. Her heartfelt claims about her nasty sister and how I was wrecking the family out of envy backfired swiftly. her followers began to question her perspective, especially after she moaned about possibly losing her European summer holiday plans. Many of them had part-time jobs to pay for their textbooks. Her most recent outburst occurred when she realized she might need to obtain a job. She posted a 20-minute diatribe on how unfair it was that she might have to work in retail or food service like any other person. The comment section rapidly turned against her, with many pointing out how out of touch she seemed. She's losing followers on a regular basis, and her attempts to present herself as the victim have just exacerbated the situation. The actual wake-up call for her came last week, when she received her college admission letter. Instead of the customary festivities, there was panic throughout the house. My parents committed to pay for her entire education, but they are currently suffering major financial difficulties. Their savings have been exhausted due to legal bills and a potential settlement. Sophia's dream school is suddenly less guaranteed, and for the first time, she is confronted with the implications of their collective decisions. Meanwhile, my career has become my haven. My firm's partners have been really helpful, particularly after I informed them that I may want some flexibility for court dates. One of them approached me and related her own story of family financial abuse. She has become something of a mentor to me, guiding me through both professional and personal obstacles. Last month, she even assigned me to oversee a key project, indicating that she believes in my talents despite my ongoing personal troubles. The most reassuring event occurred during a heated phone conversation with my folks last week. My mother began her typical guilt trip about family loyalty. But this time, I found my voice. When she started talking about how families should help each other, I politely asked her, "Where was this concern for your family when you spent my education fund on Instagram photo shoots and social media courses?" The line became silent. Then she hung up. An hour later, my father called back with an entirely different tone. For the first time, he seemed dejected. Their lawyer phoned mine yesterday, saying we might be able to reach an agreement. The judge's first remarks regarding their breach of fiduciary duty appear to have finally struck home, particularly when he referenced potential punitive damages. My folks are beginning to understand that this will not go away with a few sad phone calls or guilt trips. The entire experience has been transformational. Standing up to them was daunting at first, but each small success has made me stronger. I am no longer the silent daughter who absorbs whatever attention they decide to offer me. I'm a professional lady, battling for what is rightfully mine. And I'm winning. Not just in court, but in real life. Watching Sophia deal with real-world consequences has been eye-opening. She had to cancel her summer travel plans, and there is real talk that she will attend community college rather than her ideal university. She stopped writing about me on social media once her fans began to doubt her viewpoint. Some of her acquaintances have even contacted me personally, saying that my stance against family financial exploitation has helped them think about their own family problems. One of them even called me inspirational. Imagine the scapegoat daughter becoming an inspiration. The most recent development occurred when my parents attempted one more manipulation effort. They arrived at my office, unannounced, believing they could press me in person. They didn't anticipate my entire squad to rally around me. My mentor stepped in, politely but firmly, ushering them out and telling them that any communication should go through our lawyers. It was fantastic to see their power over me dissolve in real time. I'll provide an update once we've reached an agreement, or if anything significant changes. Thank you all for your encouragement and wisdom. Thank you to everyone who shared their own experiences with standing up to toxic family members. You helped me find my voice when I needed it the most. My grandfather used to say, "Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting." Update 2. After 6 months of intensive legal battles, I am finally able to reveal the outcome. For anyone curious about the outcome of the litigation, brace up. for karma has finally caught up with my family. The settlement negotiations were severe. My parents first claimed poverty, but their social media activities exposed them. Despite claiming financial distress, my mother continued to post about weekend spa getaways and fancy purchases. When my team submitted these posts to their lawyer during mediation, he visibly shuddered. Our forensic accountant made a surprising discovery, which marked a turning point. In addition to the expenses we already knew about, my parents had started depositing money into Sophia's social network investing account. They had recruited several influencer coaches and even put down a deposit on a content creation house, all using my college fund. The judge's response was noteworthy. This isn't investing in a child's future. This is gambling with someone else's inheritance. The final settlement exceeded our first expectations. My parents had to liquidate various assets, including their vacation timeshare and investment properties we had no idea existed. Sophia's car, the one they purchased with my money, had to be sold. What's with the irony? She had barely driven it and preferred to be ferried about by our parents. What about luxury shopping sprees and European vacations? Gone. She now works at a neighborhood coffee shop, which is her first actual job at the age of 18. The transformation has been astonishing. Initially, she returned home, lamenting over having to wear a uniform and deal with tough customers. But something unexpected happened. She's genuinely maturing. She paid her first student loan payment last week and posted about it. There were no tears. There's no drama. Just a simple acknowledgement that she is learning to stand on her own 2 feet. My parents' changes have been even more dramatic. The illusion of a beautiful family life, which they had cultivated for years, has crumbled. My mother's social media accounts, which were formerly loaded with beautifully managed family images and uplifting words about unconditional love, have gone silent. Dad stopped making excuses for their actions and recently sent me an email, our first true conversation in months. In his email, he revealed something I never expected to hear. We failed you as parents. We got so caught up in making Sophia the star of our family that we forgot you were shining in your own way. He started having seen my name in an architectural magazine. I had recently won an award for an innovative ecological design project, and he stated he finally saw what my grandfather had always seen in me. My career provided the most rewarding growth opportunities. The sustainable design initiative that drew my father's interest has opened up great opportunities. 3 major corporations have approached me with job offers, and my current employer has reacted with a promotion and a significant raise. The partners even mentioned fast-tracking me for a junior partner position, which typically takes at least another 5 years. The compensation money has now arrived, and I have invested it just as my grandfather would have wished. I'll begin my master's degree in sustainable architecture next year, and I've set aside some money to establish a small scholarship for students in financial need. It feels good to transform this awful experience into something that can benefit others. Sophia and I had our first actual talk last week. She arrived at my house after her job at the coffee shop, still dressed in her uniform, looking fatigued, but more sincere than I'd ever seen her. I get it now, she remarked. Why do you fight so hard? It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. We are not best friends, and perhaps we never will be. However, we have reached a new understanding. The most difficult thing has been witnessing my parents endure the community's censure. Their social circle has dwindled significantly since the truth was out. Several family friends have discreetly contacted me, relaying similar accounts of observing their favoritism over the years, but never saying anything. My Aunt Margaret has unexpectedly become an ally, checking in on me on a regular basis, and even assisting me with my graduate school application. Looking back, this journey was much more than just reclaiming stolen funds. It's been about breaking free from destructive familial patterns and discovering my own value. The house my grandparents left me has become my sanctuary, complete with architectural sketches and future ideas. I've converted their old study into my design studio, with my drafting table set up precisely where Grandpa used to sit and encourage my dreams. Sometimes, while I'm working late at night on my designs, I sense their presence and know they'd be proud of the lady I've become. The most significant difference has been in how I perceive myself. I am no longer the family's scapegoat or invisible daughter. I'm a successful architect, a potential graduate student, and someone who has the bravery to advocate for what is right. Last week, I presented a large, sustainable housing project before the municipal council. Watching those seasoned architects and developers lean forward in their seats, truly interested in my ideas, was an experience that no amount of family approval could match. The familial dynamic that previously smothered me no longer has any hold on me. My folks are embarking on their own journey of atonement. Mom has started treatment, which she previously regarded as unnecessary. Her therapist assisted her in seeing tendencies from her own past that contributed to her bias. Dad is striving to re-establish relationships with family members who have distanced themselves owing to his enabling conduct. During our last family reunion, he actually stood up to his sister when she tried to make excuses for their previous actions. They have a long way to go, but at least they are admitting their mistakes. Sophia's transformation continues to amaze me. She's been promoted to shift supervisor at the coffee shop and is attending community college. Her social media presence now reflects a very different person, one who is discovering the importance of hard effort and genuine accomplishment. She's even created a small study club to help other working students reconcile work and education. Last week, she thanked me. "You taught me that real respect isn't about being given everything," she told me. "It's about earning your own way." The entitled youngster who used to throw tantrums over Instagram likes has matured into someone who recognizes the worth of actual achievement. To the Reddit community, your support has been vital throughout this trip. Every comment, letter, and shared story gave me the strength I needed when I was doubting myself. The reactions to my initial post made me realize how many other people have had similar issues with family financial abuse. You taught me that standing up for yourself does not make you selfish or ungrateful. Rather, it makes you powerful. Special thanks to everyone who shared their own experiences with family financial abuse and toxic dynamics. Your courage impressed me. When my grandfather established the college fund, he wanted to invest in my future. Ultimately, he offered me something far more significant than money. He taught me that I was worth fighting for. He showed me that dreams are more than simply wishful thinking. They are objectives that should be pursued with everything you have. That lesson has been worth every difficult moment on this path. For anyone out there dealing with similar family situations, remember, you deserve to be recognized, acknowledged, and your dreams taken seriously. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, even if they are family. Sometimes the most difficult battles are fought against people who should have been your staunch supporters. But those struggles shape who you are. The legal victory was only the beginning. I've begun helping other young architects at my business, particularly those dealing with financial or family issues. It feels natural to pass on the kind of support that my grandfather offered me. Next month, I'll be speaking at a professional conference on sustainable urban development, which I would never have done before. As I prepare to begin my master's program, I carry my grandfather's comments near to heart. One day, I'll see your buildings on postcards. I may have lost the money once, but I gained something far more valuable, the courage to shape my own destiny on my own terms. Every blueprint I draw, every design I develop, is a reflection of his faith in me. Thank you, Reddit, for being a part of my quest to reclaim what was properly mine. Not just money, but also my self-worth. Your intervention has transformed a story of familial betrayal into one of personal victory. I hope that my story can inspire others to have the strength to stand up for themselves and their aspirations. My sister-in-law's DNA test was meant to expose me, but it ended up destroying her own marriage instead. I met my husband, James, in our late 20s, and we soon fell in love. We married after 2 years of dating and have lived a wonderful, tranquil life ever since. Our friendship looked unshakable, based on trust and shared dreams. We celebrated the birth of our beautiful baby, Nathan, now 5 years old. He brightens our days with laughter, love, and boundless enthusiasm. We felt like the perfect little family, and I believe nothing could separate us. That is, until Sarah, my sister-in-law, decided to put a wrench in everything. Sarah and I had never really gotten along. We had an underlying tension since James introduced us. I attempted to be friendly, but Sarah clearly had other plans. She accused me of trying to overshadow her by wearing a cream-colored dress to her wedding. This wasn't even my option. Sarah had specified that all of her bridesmaids wear cream. However, on her special day, it became about me taking the show. She launched a temper tantrum, turning what should have been a happy moment into an embarrassing one for everyone. From that moment on, it was a never-ending game of sarcastic remarks, backhanded compliments, and petty behavior. If I put on a new dress, Sarah would comment, "That's nice, but I liked it better when I saw it in the store last year." If Nathan reached a milestone, she would try to belittle it by comparing him to her own son, Tommy. It was exhausting, but James and I always chose the high path. We did not want family conflict to spoil our lives. Furthermore, we wanted Nathan and Tommy to grow up together, like siblings. However, things took a nasty turn this Christmas when Sarah sought to stir the pot in unexpected ways. For Christmas, she gave Nathan one of those DNA testing kits that everyone seems to be using nowadays. At first, I didn't think much about it. Nathan has always been interested in science and enjoys knowing about his family history. But something about Sarah's smug expression as she handed him the equipment didn't sit well with me. I had the impression that this present was more than just what it appeared to be. Later that evening, James grabbed me aside. His expression concerned. He claimed Sarah had made some unusual, almost cryptic remarks about eventually obtaining answers and how the truth always comes out. A shiver went down my spine. It wasn't hard to figure out what was going on. Nathan has green eyes, whereas James and I have brown ones. Of course, anyone with a basic understanding of genetics is aware that recessive features, such as green eyes, can pass down through generations. But Sarah had been making subtle, passive-aggressive statements for years, implying that James might not be Nathan's father. Sarah's present was a deliberate attempt to sow doubt in our marriage, causing James to question Nathan's parentage. I was infuriated. How dare she use something as innocent as a child's curiosity to play petty games? But James and I wouldn't let her win. We knew the truth. Our love and trust for each other were strong, and we weren't going to let Sarah's poisonous actions disrupt that foundation. We agreed to allow Nathan to take the test if he wanted to, knowing that the findings would only confirm what we already knew. Nathan is our son, and no test could change that. Nathan, utterly oblivious of the tension building beneath the surface, was enthusiastic about the science behind the DNA test. He was excited to learn about his ancestors and where they came from. So we assisted him in the procedure, and he mailed off the gear. Meanwhile, Sarah's son, Tommy, had been watching everything develop with great curiosity. Tommy, a curious 14-year-old, opted to take a DNA test as well. Sarah's husband, Todd, felt it would be a fun family activity, so they also ordered a kit for him. What began as harmless curiosity quickly turned into a family nightmare. Nathan's findings arrived a few weeks later, and as expected, everything was correct. James was his father, without a doubt. Then came the shock of a lifetime. Tommy's results revealed that Todd was not Tommy's biological father. The reality hit hard. Sarah had an affair over a decade ago, and Tommy was not Todd's child. The discovery shattered the family like a wrecking ball. Todd was devastated. He had reared Tommy as his own, never thinking Sarah was unfaithful. To make matters worse, Todd sought a paternity test for their 7-year-old daughter. The results confirmed his greatest fears. He wasn't her father either. Sarah's entire life, the immaculate picture she had fought so hard to maintain, was disintegrating right in front of her eyes. And this wasn't a quiet, secret disintegration. The entire family was aware, and the consequences were negative. Todd filed for divorce and left their home within a few days. Sarah's world fell, and the once smug lady who had attempted to destroy my family now stood in the ruins of her own. The irony of the situation could not be ignored. Sarah's attempt to pull apart my marriage had simply exposed her own lies. Tommy was struck the hardest. He transitioned from a carefree, joyful youngster to a confused and heartbroken young adult. The man he had always called Dad was not his father, and his family was disintegrating. Nathan, too, was impacted. He and Tommy had always been close, and watching his cousin go through such upheaval made him sad and scared. He began questioning why Tommy's father was no longer around, and it hurt my heart to watch him so concerned about his cousin. Sarah's life became increasingly chaotic as time went. Todd pressed for full custody of their children, seeking to limit Sarah's role in their lives. Sarah, who had always been the glue that held the family together with her domineering personality, now appeared to be a shell of her former self. At family gatherings, she was a nervous wreck, her face pale and her eyes red from sobbing. The woman who had before attempted to make my life miserable now appeared completely defeated. Then, one day, something unexpected occurred. Sarah reached out to me. She called me, her voice unsteady and teary, pleading for assistance. She wanted me to talk to Todd and persuade him to lighten off on the custody agreement. She was anxious to salvage what little she had left of her relationship with her children, and she was seeking assistance from me. At first, I was stunned. After everything she had done to undermine my marriage and cause havoc at every opportunity, she had the arrogance to ask for my assistance. I initially ignored her calls, refusing to consider aiding her. But as the days passed, I found myself wondering about Tommy. He was the true victim in all of this. Despite the fact that none of this was his fault, he bore the brunt of it. Nathan, too, was trying to figure out why his cousin's life had been turned upside down. I started feeling conflicted. Was it appropriate to hold Sarah's conduct against her children? Should I put my rage aside and help for the benefit of the kids? James, of course, warned me to keep out of it. He insisted Sarah had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. But I couldn't ignore the idea that I might be able to assist bring some serenity to the children involved. It was not their fault that their mother made poor decisions. So I found myself at a crossroads, unsure what to do. Should I assist Sarah, or should I let her face the consequences of her own actions? And now here I am, caught between doing what is right for the children and staying away from the woman who caused so much misery. What would you do if you were in my position? Update 1. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking time to read my story. I did not expect such a large response, and your help has meant a lot to me during this tough time. It's been really difficult to navigate the emotional roller coaster I'm now experiencing, but knowing that there are others out there who understand and care has been quite beneficial. I wanted to provide an update on what has occurred since my previous post, and I hope it puts some light on the complex situation we are dealing with. Sarah is still contacting me regularly, and to be honest, it's getting tiring. I expected her to back off or cool down, but she hasn't. She is relentless. On one especially horrible day, she called me 3 times in a row, leaving lengthy, sobbing voicemails. I could sense the desperation in her voice, but after everything, it was difficult to feel sympathy. At one point, my husband James became so frustrated that he couldn't take it anymore. He called her himself. James rarely loses his cool. So when he phoned her, I knew he was serious. I could hear his wrath from across the room. He exploded, telling her he was fed up with her, disrespecting me and attempting to manipulate our family. He made it apparent that this was more than simply a DNA test. It was about years of snarky remarks, manipulation, and her blatant disrespect for limits. Sarah did not take it well. She burst into tears on the phone, telling James that I had poisoned his mind against her, that I was the one who was keeping him away from his family. Hearing her sob like that made me conflicted. I felt a glimmer of sympathy, but basically, I was tired. After that chat, things became worse. Sarah's tone changed again. She began contacting me regularly, alternating between asking for help and accusing me of attempting to ruin her life. She was pleading for my aid at one point, claiming she wanted me to talk to Todd and help things go well. The next thing I knew, she was calling me manipulative, alleging I was jealous of her and her family, and that I wanted to end her marriage. It was as if she wasn't sure if I was her enemy or her rescuer. Honestly, coping with her emotional outbursts has been draining. I feel like I'm locked on a roller coaster that I didn't sign up for. Throughout all, my main focus has been the children. They are innocent in all of this, but they are the ones suffering the most. I can't quit thinking about Tommy and Nathan. Tommy's discovery about his biological father must have been traumatic for him, and it's evident that he's having difficulty processing it. It's difficult for me to see him suffer through this without being able to help. Nathan, on the other hand, isn't really sure what's going on, but he senses something wrong. We attended a family gathering a few days ago, and Nathan wanted to play with Tommy like they used to do. They used to be really close, almost inseparable. But when Tommy came over, I noticed an immediate shift in him. He was distant, reserved, and rarely engaged with Nathan. My heart bled as I saw the two boys, who had previously been like brothers, drift apart. Nathan continued asking why Tommy wasn't laughing or playing like he used to, but I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. Instead, I made up reasons, telling him Tommy was simply sleepy or had a lot on his mind, but I knew it was more than that. Meanwhile, Sarah keeps sending me lengthy, dramatic texts. She wrote me a note yesterday claiming she felt betrayed by our family. I really wanted to yell. How could she feel betrayed? She was the one who made these decisions. She was the one who caused the situation. And yet, she refuses to accept responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. Mine, James's, Todd's, never hers. James and I have had numerous late-night discussions on how to approach this. We both want to do what is best for the children, but we don't know what that is anymore. James says we should intervene and try to help Tommy, especially because he and Nathan are close. However, he is also concerned about the ramifications of being too involved in Sarah's situation. We've been trying to strike a balance between being supportive of the kids and maintaining our personal peace, but it's been more difficult than we expected. Todd has begun to contact James, further complicating matters. He's been trying to make sense of things and wants to discuss the problem. James hesitantly agreed to join him for coffee. When he returned, he appeared more conflicted than ever. Todd is naturally devastated. He told James that he believes his entire life has been a lie, and that he is now struggling to figure out how to co-parent with Sarah in light of everything that has occurred. Talking with Todd simply made James feel more torn. Todd is a kind guy who is only trying to do the best he can for his children, despite the nightmare he has found himself in. After hearing Todd's side of the story, James is even more divided about how to proceed. He wants to help, but we both know that being too involved will drag us deeper into Sarah's drama. It's difficult to know what the appropriate thing to do. Every time I see Tommy, I have an intense want to help him. He's just a child caught up in this calamity, and he doesn't deserve any of it. Nathan continues asking why Tommy appears so sad all the time, and it aches my heart that I can't give him an honest reason. The more I think about it, the more split I am between wanting to intervene and being terrified of being drawn into Sarah's tumultuous world. At the end of the day, all I want to do is safeguard the children. Tommy and Nathan deserve more, and it's sad to see them suffer as a result of their parents' sins. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this without causing further harm. I'll keep you posted on what happens next. And once again, thank you for your continuing support. Update 2. Hello, folks. A lot has transpired in the last few days, so buckle up. It's been a lot for all of us, and I'm not sure how much longer this will continue. But this is where we are now. First and foremost, Sarah chose to proceed with an official medical paternity test. She was dissatisfied with the results of the at-home DNA kit, arguing it was not a reputable source for making such an important decision. To be fair, the at-home tests include a margin of error, and I'm guessing she was hanging on to whatever hope she had left. But guess what? The findings did not change. The medical paternity test confirmed what the first one had revealed. Todd is not the father of Tommy or their daughter. Sarah just created a deeper hole for herself. I was not surprised by the conclusion, but there was no space for uncertainty. Todd, in particular, appeared to be preparing for the worst-case scenario. But when the medical test results came back, I could tell it still wounded him terribly. He appeared shattered, as if the last shred of hope he clung to had been taken away. He had previously told James that he did not expect a miracle, but there was always a glimmer of hope that the test had been incorrect. Seeing the confirmation in black and white felt like the last nail in the coffin. Todd grew even more withdrawn after receiving the news. I saw it coming, but I wasn't expecting what occurred next. Todd apparently did some research after receiving the results and tracked out the man with whom he suspected. Sarah was having an affair. Todd told James that this guy was Sarah's co-worker for more than a decade ago. Todd had misgivings about their connection for a long time, but Sarah always dismissed them as work issues. Todd now understood what was going on. He recalled Sarah and this man being extremely close, attending work parties together and messaging late into the night. She was always making excuses to Todd, convincing him that everything was fine. However, it appeared that all of those suspicions were coming true. Todd decided to confront the person. He traced him down to his home and went there without informing anyone. Todd wasn't in a good mood as far as I could tell. He was hurt, angry, and desperate for an answer. Things moved swiftly. Todd wasn't having it. Even if the guy initially disputed everything, it immediately escalated into a yelling confrontation. And it wasn't long before things became physical. Neighbors heard the disturbance and phoned the police. By the time the cops arrived, Todd and the other man had been beaten badly. Todd was arrested for assault, and he now faces prosecution. It's a mess. James had to go down to the police station to help Todd. He bailed him out, but Todd now faces major legal consequences. He's claiming that the fight was provoked, but it will be difficult to prove in court. The whole thing is spiraling out of control, and I can't help but wonder if it's all because Sarah chose to hide the truth for so long. Todd is disintegrating, and it's awful to see someone who was always so composed fall apart. Meanwhile, Sarah has been scrambling to contain the damage, but it's much too late. Todd has now filed for full custody of the children, citing the affair, paternity testing, and fight as proof that Sarah is an unsuitable mother. Sarah is in a panic. She's trying to persuade everyone that Todd is the problem, labeling him a psychomaniac and citing the fight as proof that he's unstable and dangerous. She's frightened that Todd will take the kids away from her, so she's lashing out at everybody who disagrees with her. The tension between Sarah and Todd is growing by the day. Todd is furious with her for years of deceit, and Sarah is anxious to keep some control over her life, which is disintegrating around her. I can see the toll it's having on both of them, but I'm most concerned about Tommy and their daughter. Todd has been talking about moving out of state with the kids to put some distance between them and Sarah. He believes that the children deserve a fresh start, away from the tumult, but I am not sure. I appreciate his desire to protect kids, but removing them from everything they've known could be more harmful than beneficial. And legally, it will be a difficult battle. Sarah, as always, is in complete meltdown mode. She's been contacting me constantly, alternating between pleading for my assistance and accusing me of turning James against her. Dealing with her mood swings is extremely demanding. One minute, she's pleading for help, claiming she's been wronged. The next moment, she's shouting about how James and I are involved in some vast conspiracy against her. I wish I didn't feel sympathy for her, but a part of me does. She is certainly spinning, but at the same time, I can't deny that she brought it all on herself. It's difficult to watch someone self-destruct, especially when they refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. When I last saw Sarah, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she kept saying how everything was falling apart, and how Todd was attempting to take her children away. She denies that her own actions are to blame for this situation. She still perceives herself as the victim in all of this, which makes it difficult to communicate with her. She's attempting to transfer all of the blame to Todd, but anyone who has been paying attention can see that the situation is far more complicated than that. At this point, I don't believe we have any choice except to get engaged. We are already knee-deep in this mess, whether we like it or not. James believes we should help Todd deal with the legal troubles he is experiencing, especially since Todd appears to be the more stable father in this situation. But I'm concerned about how this is affecting the children. They're caught in the middle of a conflict they didn't ask for, and I'm frightened that they'll be the ones who suffer the most in the end. Tommy, especially, appears to be struggling. He's always been a sensitive child, but I've observed a shift in him since all of this began. He's quieter, more withdrawn, and clearly perplexed about what's going on. I can't imagine how it must feel to learn that the man you've always called Dad isn't your own father. Nathan has asked me several times why Tommy doesn't want to play as much anymore, and each time it crushes my heart. I'm not sure how to explain it to him in a way that he will understand. The situation is spiraling out of control, and I have no idea how it will end. Every time I think it can't be any worse, something new happens, dragging us all deeper into the insanity. We're simply trying to take things one day at a time and hope for the best. But it's difficult to be hopeful when the future appears so uncertain. I'll keep you all posted as things go, but for the time being, we're simply holding on and hoping for a resolution that won't absolutely destroy these kids' lives. Update 3. Hello everyone. It is time for the final update. A lot has transpired since my last post, and I believe things are finally starting to settle. We're not totally out of the woods yet, despite the roller coaster ride we've had, but it appears that the worst is behind us. I've been contemplating everything, and I wanted to express how things have progressed. First, let us discuss Todd and the man Sarah had an affair with. You're all aware that Todd was detained after the confrontation became physical. What I didn't mention earlier is that the issue worsened even further. Initially, we believed Todd would face substantial charges for the incident. However, in an unexpected change of events, the guy chose not to press charges. Todd told us that this man wants to disassociate himself from the whole affair. He was probably aware that his engagement may make matters worse for him, both personally and professionally. While he admitted to the affair when the police arrived, he has now severed relations with both Todd and Sarah. In some ways, that chapter of the story has come to an end. And to be honest, I believe it is for the better. Todd does not need to continue battling with someone who clearly has no regard for the consequences of his actions. Now, the bit regarding the kids has been the most emotionally draining for everyone. Todd had initially applied for full custody of Tommy and his younger sister, which understandably caused Sarah to panic. Todd, however, had a breakthrough following some difficult meetings with his lawyer and some profound thought. He recognized that no matter what the paternity test showed, Tommy and his sister were still his children. He has been their father since birth, nurturing, loving, and guiding them. That relationship cannot be severed with a DNA test. Todd informed James and me that he is no longer fighting for custody out of anger or vengeance. Instead, he is doing it to protect the children from the upheaval Sarah has caused. He is desperate to protect them from the consequences of her conduct, and he has been absolutely amazing throughout. It's evident how much he adores those children, and that has been his primary emphasis in everything. He has made it a point to remind them that whatever happens between him and Sarah, they will always be his children. He loves them unconditionally and isn't going away. Todd's handling of the chat with the children was exceptional. He sat them down and described the problem in an age-appropriate manner, not giving them too much information, but just enough to understand why things were changing. He told them that they had done nothing wrong, and that this was not their fault. Tommy, in particular, has struggled to digest everything. I believe Todd's assurance that he is still Tommy's father, no matter what, helped to alleviate some of his bewilderment and anguish. Tommy is still struggling, but he isn't as lost as previously. Sarah, on the other hand, has been an absolute wreck. She's still in full panic mode, urgently attempting to save her relationship with the children. But she's not doing it the right way. Instead of focusing on their emotional needs, she has been preoccupied with her own issues, such as managing her public image and cleaning up the mess she caused. Meanwhile, Todd has been attending their school events, driving them to doctor's appointments, and ensuring their well-being. It's terrible to see, but Sarah seems more concerned with how things appear on the outside than what's going on inside her family. The custody battle is still underway, but Todd has shifted his strategy. He is now advocating for shared custody rather than full custody, recognizing that the children still need their mother in their life, despite everything. Todd is attempting to be the bigger person here, acknowledging that, as damaging as Sarah's actions have been, the children should not lose their relationship with her entirely. Nonetheless, Todd continues to advocate for primary custody because he has been the more stable father throughout. He wants to provide the children a sense of stability and normalcy, which they have been missing for a long time. Based on what we've heard, the court appears to be siding with Todd. He has proved that he is the one who provides stability for the children, and his love for them is obvious. Unfortunately, Sarah is not helping her own cause. She's still making everything about her, portraying herself as the victim and citing Todd's previous outburst as proof that he's unfit. But everyone involved understands. Todd's outburst was motivated by hurt, and he's been doing everything he can to move on in a healthy way. Sarah and Todd's marriage is over. The divorce is underway, and there is no going back. Todd is now at peace with this. He's told James and me that he's no longer furious at Sarah, just sad. It's sad to think about what could have been. I'm sorry their relationship ended the way it did. It is unfortunate that it has had such an influence on the children, but he is also focused on going forward. Todd's top priority right now is his children, and he's doing everything he can to be the best father possible. James and Ty are doing well, despite all of this. It's been difficult to see everything unfold, but we've tried to be supportive without becoming overly involved in the drama. Nathan and Tommy remain as close as ever, and we've been making sure the boys spend time together to assist Tommy cope. I think it's been beneficial for both of them to have that connection, especially because everything else feels so unstable. One thing I've learned from all of this is how resilient children can be when surrounded by love. Despite the tumult, Todd's love for his children has served as a stabilizing force, keeping them on track. We've all tried to help, but in the end, Todd's strength and determination will see them through this. I'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone for their tremendous support. I never dreamed that a DNA test would change my life so dramatically, but here we are. Your wisdom, good words, and support have helped me more than I can express. Navigating this scenario has been difficult at times, but knowing that there are others who care and understand has made all the difference. I'm hoping that this will be the final significant update I need to provide. Things are still in motion, but I am hopeful that the worst is behind us. The kids are still surrounded by affection, which is ultimately what matters. Thank you again for staying with me on this trip. Let's hope the next chapter is one of healing and harmony. Fiancé blames me for his life choices, then breaks up. Am I the asshole for being disgusted and just saying okay? Original post. So, IDK man. I, 28, have been with my fiancé, Alex, 34, since 2020. We met at a friend's party, hit it off, and have been together ever since. He finished his doctorate in economics just last year. Since then, he has been working at the university. I have my master's in media sciences and decided to start working instead of going for a PhD, okay? So the problem is that Alex broke up with me last Monday. It was literally so surreal and honestly just weird. For the past few months, he'd been acting strange. He was making demands and then dropping them immediately. A few examples. He told me we were going to paint our walls back from dark green to white. When I asked why, he just said, "For fuck's sake, forget it," and never brought it up again, even when I asked. Another time, he came home and got mad because I was sitting on the couch with my head covered in a blanket. I had cramps. He was upset because I was just sitting there watching Netflix. Mind you, the house was spotless. When I tried to talk about it, he said, "Forget it. It's not a big deal." This kind of thing became common. Every time I tried to communicate, tried to figure out what was going on, whether it was something I did or maybe he was just stressed at work, he would just say everything was fine, but he was clearly seething with rage. I didn't even have to do anything. He would find something to complain about. The apartment, clothes, me, work, etc. So I gave him space, which apparently was also wrong. I told him I was going to help my parents with repairs for a few days, and somehow that was also wrong because he wanted to renovate the apartment too. Then on Monday, I got a text saying we needed to talk. I knew what was coming, and after the last few months, I had made peace with it. When I came home, he was sitting on the couch. He didn't even wait for me to take off my jacket before saying, "I want to break up." Then the verbal diarrhea started. He told me he resented me. First, because I didn't pursue my academic career further, even though I was capable. And he didn't want to upset me at the time. Then, when I started making more money, since he didn't make much as a PhD student, he felt like I should have the last word financially. And he hated it. Mind you, I never said anything like, "It's my money, so I have the final say." That's a rule he imposed on himself, and he hated it. He said he hated our paint scheme, the couch, and even our fucking crockpot. Then, he told me he had rejected a better PhD program to stay here because I had already started my job by the time he got the acceptance letters. Only he never told me he had even applied overseas. He said a few months ago he checked in with a friend who's in that program, saw how they were thriving, and decided I ruined his life. He said I had too much control over his life and that he hated the idea that I could just decide not to pay for things and fuck him over. I honestly don't even know what that means. He also said he hated that all his friends loved me and didn't let him vent about me. Then he said again, I'm done. I was floored. I had already made peace with the idea that we were ending, and it hurt. But after that rant, I was just disgusted. I looked at him, probably with a disgusted expression, and said, okay? He lost it. He said this is exactly what he meant, that it was horrible. We had been together for 4 years, and all I had to say was okay to our breakup. I just asked if he wanted to stay here while he figured out where to go. He said, typical, of course you're holding the apartment over me, and started running again. So I just left. I told my parents, and they're also confused. My dad suggested I reach out to our landlord and explain the situation to see what options I have. I can keep paying the rent no problem myself. He covered the utilities and some subscriptions. Just to reiterate, I never had a problem with this. I saw that he was chasing his dream, and that was more important to me than a 50-50 financial split. I make good money and am happy at my job. I never saw it as slaving away. I always had the mentality that my money was our money because we were building a life together. Of course, I had my own savings and fun money, but I honestly never cared. As long as I felt he was working towards something and wasn't taking advantage of me, I was fine with it. More than fine. Alex is still mad. He's going between texting me like a robot about the logistics of the split to being a seething asshole, complaining about everything. I'm not even hurt anymore. I just feel nauseated by him at this point. I don't know. Should I have reacted differently? Edit, thank you for all your opinions. It was nice to get this off my chest. LOL. Just to clarify that, I don't feel like a victim. I feel like something happened, and my relationship just turned bad. He behaved like an asshole, but that is the extent of it. Very clearly, something is going on. But he doesn't want me to be part of whatever it is, and I have to respect that. Now I just have to detangle myself legally from him, and after that, I'll just be left alone with my ugly green wall color. I think I might also adopt a cat as my ex was really allergic. Some of OP's comments. Commenter, NTA. Dude basically said he hates you and everything about you. What are you supposed to do? Beg for his love when you can find someone who'll give it to you readily. Nah. Sorry this happened and that you were blindsided. But this will be a good thing in the long run. On to the next. F. What do I W? He sounds jealous, insecure, and emotionally stunted. If what you've written is how things played out, then you dodged a huge bullet. Oh, he was basically doing his own renditions of 10 things I hate about you. I don't know. I mean, he wants to break up with me. Why would I plead? It is done to a deleted comment. I was really confused trying to take everything in. He talked really fast and a lot, so I did not know what else to say. Also, because everything I do is wrong. I think he would have been even more annoyed if I started to cry or something. Ghost him now. I can't ghost him. We have to talk about the lease, about our wedding savings account, and a few other things. To another commenter, yes, that is easy said. But I have to wait to get a response from the landlord. We have to inform the bank, etc., etc. So, until I don't have confirmation that I am in the clear, I am keeping him unblocked. I have him muted. The well all commenter. Sounds like his ego couldn't handle you being the breadwinner. Not your problem. He could have communicated like an adult rather than seething in his own insecurities. He sounds emotionally weak. Oop. Which is so dumb. He is a doctor in economy and past pursuing becoming a professor commenter. Dude basically hates himself for decisions he took without ever consulting you. He chose his comforts, but now since others seem in a better position, he is venting on you and making you the culprit. NTA, but your man has a little brain and doesn't know what to do with it. Oop. I would have supported him if he wanted to move away. IDK, if we would have stayed together, because LDRs are hard, but I would have been 100% supportive. Maybe he resented you for being successful while he wasn't. But that is the thing. He was successful. He has even published a few papers in important magazines and is on the way to become a junior professor. He is objectively really successful. This is all just so weird, commoner. Girl, I've been with a man like that. They want drama. They want toxicity. They will fuck up your life out of pure insecurity and hate. You dodged a massive bullet. I'm sorry this happened. You deserve better. Wish you the best. OOP. Then I hope he meets the telenovela star of his dreams. I prefer my boring happy life commenter. What country are you in? Here in the US, the average person would have accumulated debt if they made it that far in their education. Germany update. Post. To start, Alex moved out pretty quickly after the breakup. He has been staying with a friend, and we sorted out everything like mail, subscriptions, and the lease. I'm also in the process of adopting a cat. Her name is Luna, but I have been thinking about changing it since my family already has 2 pets named Luna, Amun and Kumar. She is still at her foster home for now, but I have visited her a few times, and I already adore her. She is a scrappy little tabby who follows her foster mom around like a shadow. And I can't wait for her to move in during the December. I've already gotten her bowls, toys, and a bed by the window ready. Now, on to what happened. Last week, I was out showing someone around the city. He is the son of my parents' friends who recently moved here for work. My parents asked me to help him get familiar with the area, so I agreed. It was nothing special. Just walking around, grabbing coffee, and pointing out useful spots in the city. Apparently, Alex saw us. I didn't even realize he was there. But later that night, I started getting texts from an unknown number. I guess he got a new number since I blocked his old one. The texts were just weird. He accused me of flaunting my new relationship in public, said I must have been seeing this guy before we broke up, and told me that everything he suspected about me was true. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to entertain his paranoia. The messages kept coming though. They went from angry to desperate, with him saying things like, "At least admit you were lying to me," and "Was anything about us even real?" It was exhausting and, honestly, a little scary to see how quickly he spiraled. For the record, this guy isn't my boyfriend. He's not even someone I'm interested in. He's just the son of family friends who needed help settling into the city. The whole thing was completely innocent, but Alex has twisted it into some kind of betrayal in his head. What gets me is how little Alex seems to know me. I'm not the type of person to jump into a relationship so soon after everything that happened. Even if I were, it wouldn't be any of his business. We are done. I've made that clear. After I didn't respond to his text, Alex started calling. I didn't pick up, but the voicemails were a mix of angry rants and desperate pleas. I ended up blocking his new number too. It feels ridiculous that I have to keep doing this, but I guess this is where we are now. Then this weekend, I went out to a bar with my friends. A few hours in, guess who walked in? Alex. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if he followed me there, but as soon as he spotted me, he came straight over. He was clearly upset, asking to talk, and I told him no. My friend stepped in, and thankfully, he left without causing a scene, but it ruined my night. It felt like I couldn't escape him no matter where I went or what I did. When I got home later that night, I was completely drained. I had just started to relax when I heard a knock on my door. It was Alex, standing there in tears. He started crying, saying he missed me, that he didn't understand why I was doing this to him, and that he didn't know how to move on. It was like all the anger from earlier had been replaced with this desperate sadness. I didn't let him in. I told him he needed to leave, and if he didn't, I would call someone to make him leave. He begged me to listen, but I just closed the door. I spent the rest of the night feeling shaken and honestly a little scared. I don't know what he's going through. I wrote to his best friend about the situation, but pleaded to talk to him. He said he would. I'm seriously considering getting a new phone number and possibly even talking to someone about how to handle this legally if it keeps happening. It feels unfair that I have to go to these lengths just to have some peace, but I don't see another option. Update post to November 28th, 2024. 3 days later. Thanks for the concern and support I've received. I'm fine, really. A lot of people suggested things like getting a restraining order, but I just want to clarify that it's not as simple as walking into an office and asking for one. The process involves proving there's an immediate danger to your safety, providing evidence like texts, calls, or witnesses, and then attending court to get approval. It's not something you can do lightly or without solid proof. And no, I'm obviously not getting a gun. I've also seen people diagnosing Alex with various mental health issues, and I want to ask everyone to stop. Yes, something is clearly wrong, but I'm not a doctor, and neither are most of you. It's not fair or helpful to label him with something like bipolar disorder or anything else without real expertise. For what it's worth, I don't actually feel like I'm in danger. In the past month, these were the only 3 incidents that happened. I don't think he's actively stalking me so much as he just knew my patterns. The bar we were at is my favorite spot, and it was a party of one of my closest friends. So it makes sense that he might have guessed I'd be there. When he showed up at my apartment, he knew what time I usually got home. The city tour is the only thing that might have been more intentional, but it could also have been a coincidence that triggered everything. Anyway, this is the end of it. Yesterday, Alex came over with his mom and one of his friends. At first, I didn't want to let him in, but he promised me that this would be the last time I ever saw him. I agreed, mostly because his mom and friend were there, and I figured it would be more awkward to argue on my doorstep. When we sat down, Alex admitted that he was going through a crisis. He told me he was mad at me, but he didn't know why. He said he doesn't like me, that I annoy him, but that he weirdly still loves me, which is why he went crazy when he saw me with someone else. He assured me there wasn't anyone else on his end either. He said he felt like he was going insane. He talked about how he feels judged for being older and not being able to give me the life he thinks I deserve. He said he hates his colleagues, hates his job, hates everything right now, and that everyone and everything annoys him. He told me he feels old and like he should want kids at this point in his life, but he doesn't. And that thought terrifies him. He said he just wants to be alone and not talk to anyone for a while. I didn't say much. I mostly just nodded because I didn't know what to say. After he was done, he told me he was leaving. He's on some kind of mental health leave from work, and he said he's leaving the country on Sunday. He's going to South America to spend time in nature and find himself. He thanked me for everything and said he was sorry for how he acted. Then he just got up, grabbed the few things he had left at my place, and walked out. His mom was inconsolable. She kept apologizing to me over and over, saying how embarrassed she was by his behavior. I told her it was okay, and that she didn't need to apologize to him. She cried a lot, and his friend ended up driving her home after Alex left. I don't really know how I feel about all of this. Part of me is relieved that it's over. Part of me feels sad for him because he clearly doesn't know how to deal with everything he's feeling. Mostly, though, I just feel tired. I'm glad he's taking steps to figure himself out, but it's not my responsibility anymore. Some of OOP's comments on not getting a gun, editor's note. It was more than likely a downvoted troll who asked, but I liked OOP's response. You can't buy guns at an Aldi. It's more dangerous to own a gun when you have no training with it than not owning one. Commenter. He's a little young for a midlife crisis, but certainly, the man is having issues with his life choices, and it's tearing him apart. Your empathy is warranted, but in the end, those troubles are his, not yours. Hopefully, this is the last you'll hear of him. Good luck to you. Whoop! It's just a life crisis then, I guess. Who knows? Update. Same post. The 3rd of December 2024. 5 days later, about 6 weeks from OG post. Edit. December 3. He is definitely gone. My friend sent me some of his Insta stories of him at the airport, and then about a day later in Bogota. So, yep, he is gone. I am safe. And on Friday, I get to pick up Helios Maximus first, LOL. Heli for short. My dream wedding becomes a nightmare, since my fiancé is always siding with his sister, which makes me doubt our relationship as a whole. Roy, 31 million, and I, 30 female, are getting married. We clicked immediately when we first met in college. He is intelligent, endearing, attractive, and helpful. After falling in love, we worked together to plan every aspect of our future, including retirement, vacations, a college fund for our children, where to live, and how many children to have. I adore him. He is both my best friend and my soulmate. Every time I accomplish something, he would tell me he was proud of me. He really encourages me to pursue my goals and aspirations. He would encourage me to pursue endeavors I was apprehensive about by assuring me of my abilities and skills. Every time I got ready to go out, he would tell me how fortunate he was to have me as his girlfriend and give me a compliment. Roy's older sister, Kim, 33F, was 10 years old when his father died when he was just 8. Yummy, 55. His mother never got married again. She is a very kind woman. Kim rarely came and lived in a distant location for work, so I never really got to know her. At my nation, we got engaged at an engagement ceremony 8 months ago. The bride and groom typically exchange vows in front of close family members and friends. Kim returned to our city shortly after and got a job here. Things became tricky at that point. Here, it's common for the bride's parents to cover the wedding expenses. My dad instructed me to arrange the wedding according to Roy's and my preferences after hiring a wedding planner. My future mother-in-law didn't become involved in the planning process at first, but Kim followed us wherever we went, including to the caterers, the florist, and the wedding planner's office. Roy and I were the only people I wanted. I expressed my displeasure to him that Kim was making something that ought to have been exclusively for us into a third-wheel scenario. He advised me to be more hospitable, as Kim merely wanted to attend her brother's wedding. If she hadn't spoken up and hadn't offered her valuable feedback, I would have accepted it. She would ask, "Pastel?" As I selected flowers, select a new color scheme. The planner would argue, that won't give a proper view to the guests on the far left if I proposed a chair configuration. Since coconut pudding was my all-time favorite dessert as a child, I wanted to serve it to my guests at my wedding. But you know what? Not coconut, please. I have allergies, Kim remarked. Roy's constant support of her was the thing that annoyed me the most. He refused to argue or even make concessions when it came to my decision versus hers. He would simply state, "As long as you are my bride, it doesn't matter what flowers we have. Babe, let it go. It's not very important." The fact that we are getting married and beginning a new life together is all that matters. It's not just about you, he said, warning me not to be self-centered when the coconut pudding issue arose. It concerns us both as well as our families. We cannot deny Kim food during the wedding because she is family. I was getting extremely frustrated at this point. We seemed to be organizing Kim's wedding rather than mine. When we were searching for wedding dresses, or more accurately, traditional attire for our ceremony, it was the last straw. I adored the gorgeous green outfit my mom chose for me. Naturally, though, Kim had to stick her nose in. "Green isn't your color," she said. Roy agreed with her, saying, "Try something else." After trying on several gowns, I ultimately selected a rose gold one that I liked, though not as much as the green one. When it was time for Kim to go shopping, she chose the exact same green dress and made the purchase. I went crazy. I left since I didn't want to cause a scene there. Roy and I got into a heated argument when we arrived home. "Green doesn't go well with your skin tone," he informed me. "Kim looks better in it. Quit being such a baby. You had already chosen your dress." When Kim chose that one, I was shocked to hear it. I became aware that Roy consistently sided with Kim and never with me for the first time since we began organizing our wedding. The fact that the man I was staring at was the same one I fell in love with astounded me. Because Roy and Kim lost their father at a young age, they had a close relationship. He took her side when it came to our wedding and our vision, even though they were each other's best friends and support system as children. Roy would boast about his sister to anybody he could, even if they were admiring me. When we were dating in college, it was frustrating, but it wasn't a major thing, and I let it go since I knew he was very close to her. For example, if someone said that the coffee I prepared tasted good, he would remark, "If you think this is delicious, you must try the coffee my sister makes." However, since it's our wedding and not Kim's, I can't let it go this time. I screamed at him that if this wedding is taking place, it's either going to happen the way we both imagined it would, or it won't. Roy became enraged and shouted back that I was only envious of his sister and would never be able to match her. Even though Kim had been nothing but courteous to me, he claimed that I was a bitter person for harboring resentment toward her. "She was just trying to help," he said. "I have no ill will toward Kim. All I want is the wedding of my dreams." I began to doubt everything. Imagine having a child, but naming them Tammy because Kim likes the name. Since Kim enjoys orange, picture your house painted that shade. It's 2 against 1 in your relationship. Can you predict which side you will always support? Do you truly want to follow Kim's wishes for the rest of your life? Roy will not change, so don't be so foolish as to believe that he would. Now put an end to the planning. Tell your dad that nothing will cost him a cent. Before your dad has to pay for something you could later regret, save him some cash. I can now see how bleak my future will be if I choose to wed this man. I really want to call my mother and cry. I simply want to give my parents a hug and let them know that I was blinded by love and that they were correct about him. I'll have to wait, though. I cannot allow them to witness my state of misery. I must gather my thoughts and prepare myself to deal with this circumstance. I've already given the wedding planner a call and requested that she stop making any more vendor payments. Update 1. I'm eating coconut pudding at home with my sister, parents, and closest pals. To piece together the events, we spoke for a while. I neglected to add Maya, 34F, my sister. She works overseas and returned home a week ago to spend time with me and assist me with the wedding that was then approaching. Due to jet lag, Maya stayed at home on the day of the wedding dress shopping. My mom, 2 of my aunts, 4 cousins, 3 uncles, Roy, Kim, Yummy, the future mother-in-law, 2 of Roy's aunties, and 2 uncles made up the group of 18 individuals that went shopping together. Roy followed me back to his house after I became irate and fled, where we got into a fight. My mom finally lost her composure at the supermarket. She called Kim derogatory names and shouted at her. Team bride and team groom got into a heated argument after Kim replied by calling me some derogatory insults. Everyone was hauled out of the store after Yummy attempted to calm them down by calling the police. Kim vanished following the commotion. At this point, I got into an argument with Roy and made the decision to remain at my friend's place. Kim wasn't at any friends or family members' homes, and she wasn't picking up her phone. Concerned for her safety, Roy and Yummy looked everywhere for her. The following morning, they finally located her at the home of a distant relative. When Yumi called, I didn't pick up. I experienced a full-blown panic episode at the hospital. My pulse began to race, I began to hyperventilate, and I kept fainting. Before I passed out, I recall feeling a needle pierce my arm. I spent a whole day unconscious. I don't recall anything, but my companion said that I was awake at one time and acting inebriated. I was in bed when I woke up at my parents' place. No one talked to me about what had happened or asked me any questions. When I woke up, my mother asked if I wanted coffee and gave me a nice grin. And you know what? On any given day, Mom's coffee is superior to Kim's. I talked to Maya about her life overseas. I got some ice cream and other nibbles from my dad. Delaying thoughts of the wedding and the consequences till a later date felt fantastic. Maya gave me a hug while I slept that night. I recall tears streaming down my cheeks and a warm heart. Everything will be okay, she insisted. Believe in God. It's acceptable to cry and express your emotions. I received a call from Roy the following morning. I took it up. I told him I was at home when he asked where I was, and he said he wanted to meet at his house so we could sit down and work out our issues. I consented, believing that closing this chapter of my life permanently would be the only way for me to move on. My mom, Maya, and I were driven to Roy's house by my dad. There were Roy, Kim, Yummy, his mother, and his uncle, Yummy's brother. Although it's absurd, I believed Roy had acknowledged his errors and would offer an apology. I was mistaken, boy. Roy began shouting at me for creating a commotion at the wedding dress store as soon as we were seated. He continued by talking about how Kim vanished, how angry she was over my mom's remarks to her, and how she might have hurt herself. He went on to say that he and his mother had to spend the entire night driving around the city in search of Kim, and he accused me of being cold-hearted for not returning Yumi's calls. Calmly, I asked him where I had been that evening. I hadn't picked up my phone, just like Kim. Our argument made me angry. Did he ever think about my welfare before? He remained silent for a few seconds before attempting to speak, but his rambling sentences were incoherent. Now I know who is more important to you, and it's definitely not me, I informed him. His uncle stepped in and said to my dad, "Kids these days fight over the smallest things. You can definitely teach your daughter that married life isn't like the movies, and that sacrifices are necessary." In a strong response, my father said, "My daughter is the only one who can determine if a problem is little or major. Let her talk to her partner." "I know I am the side chick, and your sister is the main chick," I added, turning to face Roy. Being her own husband's side chick would not be acceptable to anyone with any kind of self-respect. Your sister has arranged a wonderful wedding, and you are welcome to marry her. When I watched Roy's face flush, he slapped me across the face so forcefully that my nose and inner cheek began to bleed before I could react. My dad put him in a chokehold, struck him in the face, then continued to punch him in the stomach. Roy's uncle, Yumi, and my mother attempted to keep them apart. While tending to my bleeding nose, Maya gave me a firm hug. Meanwhile, Kim screamed like a banshee, and accused me of something I can't even remember. Maya grabbed Kim's hand and gave her a backhand as she strode at me, threatening to strike me. Kim screamed as if she were being skinned alive and collapsed to the ground. At this point, neighbors entered and divided the group. A few minutes later, the ambulance and police showed up. Roy's face was bluish, and he was bleeding from his mouth. He was taken away by ambulance. In another ambulance, I was taken. Both families were sitting in the police station when I was transported there after receiving treatment. Roy wasn't present. Yummy came over to me, said she was sorry, and wished me success going forward. After hearing my account, the police asked if I wanted to file charges against Roy. Yes, I replied. They told me that Roy might file charges against my dad since he had a broken rib and a knocked-out tooth. We were all led to return home by midnight. My pals and I enjoyed brunch together this morning. We spoke a lot and came to the conclusion that I should begin treatment and perhaps take some medication for my mental health. While my dad continued to make cheesy jokes, we ordered pizza for lunch. My best pals Maya, Mom, and I later began reading my post's comments. The responses, particularly the ones in which I said I wanted to call Mom and cry, really moved her. She assured me that I don't have to put up a brave front while I'm in pain on the inside, and that I should never be afraid to show my vulnerability around them. She expressed her wish that I had gotten in touch with her earlier. I want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to leave a comment and express care for a total stranger. I wouldn't have recognized the problems as clearly if it weren't for individuals like you. Even if I had forgiven Roy, I might have had a horrible marriage. I sincerely appreciate you all. You have helped me to believe in people again. You're entirely correct. Everyone who stated, I need to grow a spine. But I would like to express my viewpoint. Despite the fact that I have a master's degree, and my parents never taught me this, girls in my country are frequently taught from an early age that those who maintain families are good girls, and those who destroy them are bad girls. I wouldn't confront Kim because I didn't want to start a fight, because that's what bad girls do. I'm hoping treatment will help me change this way of thinking. In addition to the loss of the relationship and the past, I'm still in mourning for the lovely future I had imagined. I am mourning the death of my life's love, who in retrospect never really existed. I feel lighter today, but I know it will take time for me to recover. My parents are ecstatic, but they keep their joy from me since they know I'm still in pain. Since the fallout, they appear to have aged backward. Roy has been released from the medical facility. I wish him and his sister a lifetime of happiness. I'm thrilled to have discovered who genuinely loves me, and you have all demonstrated to me how supportive my family is. I've never made a better choice than to dump Roy. I no longer feel the claustrophobia I did after Kim moved back, thanks to Kim and Roy ruining my happiness. This demonstrates that it was the proper choice to leave him. My biological mother organized my birthday celebration around her stepdaughter's favorite pastimes, and I laughed in her face. When I was 6 years old, my parents divorced and went their own ways. They both started new families, although they obviously shared custody of me. My mother married a man, let's call him Robert, when I was 9 years old. He already had a daughter, Kira, who was 2 years my senior. When I was 8 years old, my dad proposed to Lila, a lovely woman, and they were married when I was 12. Lila and I have a lovely friendship. For me, she has been a real mother. She essentially assisted my dad in raising me, showed interest in my life, offered consolation, counseled me, and we had things in common. Together, we engaged in a variety of activities. She and I just discussed the prospect of her legally adopting me when I reach adulthood. Since my parents share custody, doing so today might be a little complicated legally, but I want it to be formal because she is my real mother. In contrast, I have virtually little relationship with my biological mother. I was made to spend some days with her, but we were never able to connect. Since Kira already had her own mother, she devoted all of her time to showing her love and care. Kira was always involved in activities, even when my mom tried to include me, and we only did things that she enjoyed. I eventually began turning down her invites and frequently asked if I might skip seeing her on the designated days. I preferred to stay at home with my father and Lila because I was nearly always disregarded or left out. Although he had to follow the judge's guidelines, my father always made an effort to understand me. As I grew older, he acknowledged that he was worried that if he allowed me to skip the visits, my mother may pursue some nasty legal action. My mom was probably going to do this. I didn't want to cause my father any trouble after hearing this, because I understood his motivations. I stopped requesting things like that and complied with the timetable. Let's go right to the subject now. My 18th birthday is in 2 weeks. Fortunately, my birthday coincides with the days I'm supposed to be with my dad. Thus, a month ago, he, Lila, and I began organizing my birthday. Nothing too extravagant. Just a get-together with loved ones at my favorite pizza joint. A laid-back evening where I can enjoy myself and the people I care about. I enjoy singing, and the place provides karaoke. We invited everyone, including my mother, after making reservations and organizing everything. To be honest, I didn't really want her there. But I reasoned that since I won't be bound by the judge's regulations once I turn 18, this might be the only time I had to include her. In order to finalize the guest list for the pizza establishment, we sent out the invites 2 days ago and have already received the majority of the responses. My mother was the only one who hadn't replied. I told my dad that I wouldn't press the issue because I was okay with her not wanting to come if she didn't reply. Although he didn't express it publicly, I believe my dad was also a little relieved. This afternoon was when the drama began. In a furious phone call, my mother accused me of being immature and advised me to never make plans without first informing her. She frequently forgot my birthday, so it was hypocritical of her to complain now. I was perplexed and reminded her that I've always planned my birthdays with Dad and Lila. She became very furious as a result. Claiming Kira had been crying ever since she saw the invitation, she began to attack me. Kira had apparently already organized an entire birthday celebration for me. I couldn't speak. There is no relationship between Kira and me. She is the quintessential pampered brat who craves attention, and my mother has always encouraged this behavior, which has made it worse. We've never had a good relationship. Why Kira would want to plan a birthday celebration for me was beyond me. It was illogical. She didn't tell me why she did it, so I asked her. She didn't really expect me to have no plans for my 18th birthday, did she? It was absurd. According to my mother, it was meant to be a surprise, and she assumed I didn't want to do anything for my birthday because I hadn't told her about my intentions. She could have just asked after all. The worst part, though, the one that made me lose my temper, is about to happen. Perhaps in an attempt to make me feel bad about what I would have missed, my mother began to detail everything Kira had arranged for my celebration. Kira's favorite hobby was everything, even the things I didn't enjoy. For instance, she had made lunch reservations at a fish restaurant. I avoid eating fish because it makes me sick, not because I'm impulsive. Even though I've had it checked, my body just rejects it. I'm not allergic. She also organized an afternoon event at a horseback riding ranch close to the city where my mom currently resides. Horses don't appeal to me. I'm afraid of riding them or being around something that large, but it's not that I don't enjoy them as creatures. The final plan was to return to my mom's house for a BBQ meal in the backyard. I simply didn't want to see my mother more than was absolutely required. Furthermore, my mother added that invitations had already been sent out. I was stunned at this moment. Since none of my pals, my dad, or his family had gotten anything, I had to inquire as to who they had shipped them to. It turned out that the majority of the people on the guest list were Kira's friends, Robert's family, and my mother's family. Under the guise of celebrating my birthday, Kira essentially planned a party for herself. I was unable to contain myself any longer. I hung up the phone after laughing in my mother's face. The entire situation was too absurd to be real. After a little while, my dad approached me and told me that my mom had phoned him because I had made fun of her. He became agitated and began telling me that they were attempting to be kind for once, regardless of how I felt about my mother. I immediately stopped him and gave him the party specifics, which my mother had reportedly forgotten. His face shifted rapidly. I've been listening to him rage at my mother for the past 20 minutes or more, and he just said, "I'm going to make a phone call." When Lila heard about the issue, she came to me. She acknowledged my point of view, but suggested that laughing in my mother's face and hanging up wasn't the most responsible way to react. She wasn't upset, but she was a little let down that I hadn't handled it more politely. I thought about what I had done after she had gone. I don't think discussing it with my mother would have helped, but perhaps I was a bit harsh. I could have handled it better, though. I am beginning to believe that I may have been a bit of a jerk at that time. In all honesty, though, what did she anticipate? That I would bow down and take the scraps that were thrown to me? She was obviously not thinking at all. As usual, she was simply following Kira's lead. The problem is that individuals like that depend on others to comply without protest. They are unable to cope with the inevitable counterattack. Was I able to be more courteous? Yes, most likely. Was my response entirely warranted? Oh, of course. To any stranger on the internet who might be reading this, I'm proud that I defended myself. I've developed strong bonds with my father and stepmother, and I'm really proud of myself for resisting my mother's foolishness. I hope you have a wonderful birthday. What about my mother? If I decide to stop communicating with her after my birthday, she's going to have a terrible awakening. To be honest, it's advantageous to all parties. I can appreciate Lila's perspective, but there's no reason to hold back if your parents don't accept you at almost 18. Updated. I first discussed my response to my mother with Lila. Lila has consistently stressed the value of communication and urged me to discuss my issues in order to find solutions. I realized the context of her remark regarding my actions, but I also expressed my opinion to her, telling her that I was laughing because it was the only natural response I had to the situation. My mother was describing, which was too ridiculous. I honestly wondered at one point, is this a joke or some kind of nasty prank? Is she inventing this? Due to the fact that her foolishness was completely absurd. Although she acknowledged my viewpoint, Lila warned me that there will be times in life when I can't just chuckle and end the call. She was concerned about how I would respond and wanted to teach me how to deal with such circumstances in the future. I'm glad we had a conversation and were able to resolve the issue. I also discussed my dad's phone conversation with my mother. My mother apparently had a reason for everything. She said that Kira wanted to share her love of horseback riding with me, that she wanted to make a nice sisterly gesture on my special day, and that she didn't think my dislike of fish was a serious problem, just a whim. She even defended the fish restaurant by claiming that the fish they provided was the best in town. I threw up multiple times in front of her as a child, just because I was around areas that smelled strongly of fish. So that last excuse was a flagrant lie. She is well aware that I have a serious problem with it. My father said that Kira had obviously arranged the celebration for herself, and that nothing they had prepared was done for me. He made the point that if none of my significant others were invited, it wasn't a party for me. Instead of reacting to this, my mother started to complain about how pampered and ungrateful I was. My dad then hung up the phone and told her to go to hell. I took another piece of advice from all of you after hearing this, and I wrote a letter to my mother. I decided to be mature this time and write it as courteously as I could. I stated I was sorry for laughing, but I explained that my only natural response to what she said was to laugh, since it was so absurd. I reminded her that she doesn't know me at all, has never cared to get to know me, and never made an attempt to establish a relationship with me. I pointed out that they could enjoy the birthday celebration with their family and friends, because it was full of things that Kira liked. Additionally, I informed her that her actions made it plain what her priorities were. so I rescinded her invitation to my pizza party and advised her not to bother attending. I said she wasn't on my list of priorities, which I now possessed. I informed her that I was already very happy having Lila as my mother. I asked her not to get in touch with me again and wished her well with her new family. I don't mind that she didn't reply. After reading the message, she would have likely complained more about how spoiled and ungrateful I am if she had responded. She either doesn't understand or acts as though she doesn't, so there's no need in talking to her. But I feel more at peace now that I've made my feelings clear, and this scenario is over. I'm grateful to everyone for assisting me in seeing that a definitive conclusion was required. My dad questioned my mom about how she could have thrown me a surprise party when I wasn't around. He also questioned how she could have believed that he wouldn't celebrate my 18th birthday. She clarified that Robert had made plans to come collect me on the morning of my birthday. But my dad took it a little personally. LOL. Under false pretenses, they planned to take me to my mother's house and explain the situation to Dad and Lila. To be honest, I have no idea how they anticipated this to function. No matter what reason they came up with, I would have flatly refused to visit my mom's house if it hadn't been her planned day. Above all, I would never have left Lila and Dad to celebrate my 18th birthday at my mother's house. A positive relationship between my mother and I would have been one thing, but that was certainly not the case. Robert is the only one I don't feel like blaming in all of this. Even though we were never close, he was always courteous to me when we shared a home. When I went to my mother's house, he even cleared out his study to give me a permanent place in his home. I don't blame him for anything because he always tried to be nice to me, even though we didn't form a stepdaughter-stepfather tie. He probably sincerely believes that the party is for me. We aren't close enough for him to understand my preferences unless my mother informed him, which I doubt she did. Fortunately, nothing of mine was left at my mother's place. My father's residence is where I keep all of my possessions. When I went to my mother's, I would usually fill my bag with the things I would need for the day and bring them back when I went to my father's. Because Kira's friends and Robert's family frequently visited, I never felt comfortable leaving anything with her because I didn't want my possessions in plain sight of strangers. That's about it for now. I hope my mother respects my decision to stop communicating with me and stops bothering me. Following the holidays, I would like to discuss the adoption with Leah. When we first discussed it, she appeared to be really happy. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their wisdom and nice thoughts. Your advice has improved my situational management. Although I acknowledge that I'm still a little immature, I believe this experience has allowed me to evolve and see the problem from a variety of angles. Best wishes to you? Yes. I considered contacting Robert, but I don't have his phone number. Since most of our meetings were friendly greets and light conversation, we never felt the need to stay in touch. The last time I left my mother's place, I believe Robert and I said our final goodbyes, because I don't have Kira's number either. I don't spend a lot of time with my mother's relatives. My grandma, my aunt, and my uncle are the only three individuals involved. I've only seen my uncle a few times over the holidays when I'm spending time with my mother, because he and his family reside a few hours away. Every time we interacted, it was short and far away. I only have friendly contact with my grandmother and aunt. They have given me money as birthday presents using my father's card, and we text each other holiday pleasantries. But that's about it. Even when we have met, our discussions have been informal and have only been exchanging life updates. They haven't texted me since the incident with my mother, and I didn't ask any of them until my 18th birthday. I believe they simply don't give a damn. Let's go on to the second tale. Before anyone told me directly, my wife's friend's Instagram account revealed our pregnancy, causing a flurry of activity and tears. She is 27 and I am 29. We both hail from the same hometown, but we currently reside in different cities. We have been dating for 4 years and married for 2. Because of work, one stayed behind while she attended a family gathering in our hometown. It finally happened after 3 months of trying to conceive. The manner I learned about it is the issue. In our group conversation, my friend thanked me by sharing a screenshot of an Instagram story that one of my wife's friends had shared. "You're going to be the best mom," was the caption on the photo, which included my wife sobbing and embracing a few of her pals. I immediately contacted her, and she picked up right away, saying, "I have news, babe." I only said, "I know you're pregnant." "Wow, babe, how did you know?" I simply answered, "I saw it on Instagram. Didn't think to give me a call first." "What?" she asked. I said, "Yeah, but your friends posted something." "I didn't." "That's one way to know I'll become a father." I said, "Thank you," and hung up. I was enraged. She called repeatedly, but I didn't pick up until my sister called a short while later. My sister had just arrived at my in-laws' house, where everyone was fighting and panicking, and my wife was confined in her room, so she asked me what was going on. She exclaimed, "There's no way she would do that," when I told her what had happened. "Well, she did," I said. My sister promised to investigate the situation. She gave me a call back a little while later and gave me all the details. I had cooled down by then and assumed it was just a bad buddy who had chosen to post without authorization. However, my sister gave me the specifics. My wife was apparently having a late period, and while she was visiting a friend, they asked, "What if you're already pregnant?" They purchased numerous pregnancy tests, each of which produced good results. They emailed some local acquaintances to invite them over after becoming alarmed and telling her parents. Just 2 hours had gone by between the time she learned and the moment her buddy shared the information on Instagram. Before telling me, my wife told 10 or more individuals. For the record, when my sister came, she informed me that the reason for the disagreement was that the other friends were angry with the person who had posted on Instagram. Evidently, they were all upset with her and felt that was a horrible thing to do. However, they were equally baffled as to why my wife hadn't informed me earlier. When I eventually contacted my wife, she was in tears. She apologized and explained that she hadn't told me yet, since she had been preparing to surprise me. I expressed skepticism, pointing out that she wouldn't have been prepared to tell me at the same moment I called if she had truly intended to surprise me. I told her I needed some time to reflect when she fell silent. She screamed that we needed to discuss it and that I couldn't just leave. "Why do we need to talk?" I answered, "So you can tell lies once more," and I ended the call. I've received a ton of messages, but I'm really worn out. I'm exhausted by this. I'm not sure why. I'm not a crier, therefore it's odd for me to cry at random. I feel like I've been struck by a truck, but this isn't supposed to be a big problem. Hey, I know this sucks, and it was crappy of her, but don't let this ruin it for you," was the message my sister sent me, and it truly stuck. You will become a father. You will make a fantastic father. This is fantastic. The knowledge that I will soon become a father is the only thing that keeps me going at the moment. This is what I've dreamed of, and my only wish is that the kid is well. To keep my wife from becoming very upset during the pregnancy, I'll probably swallow my pride and act as though nothing is wrong. But tomorrow, I'll do it. I'm going to just pout tonight. Edit. I didn't think much of posting this in the Reddit void, but when I woke up, I saw thousands of comments and dozens of direct messages. Holy. I sincerely appreciate your concern. Just to make a few points clear, is it possible that the baby is not mine? No chance. Classic Reddit LOL. She works from home, but that isn't possible, because our house is equipped with home security cameras. Girls' nights are not something she does. I work with a female coworker, who happens to be her best friend in the city where we live. and the three of us frequently hang out. They rarely spend time together in person, but they frequently text one another. If they do, I'll be in the adjacent room at our house. The clingiest person on the planet is my wife. She texts me every 30 minutes while I'm at work. She's usually in the same room as me, or cuddling up to me when I'm at home. She holds my hand or arm when we're out. Most of the time, I genuinely enjoy it. I feel appreciated. However, it could be excessive. I even asked whether the argument we had weeks ago was the reason she didn't inform me straight away. However, it most likely isn't. Regarding her buddies, they are all really kind individuals. They've been in my life for a while. Some of the people in my sister's friend group have known each other since they were 12 years old. The only person who lives in a distant city is my wife. When she is in town, they always spend a lot of time together. I can't stress enough how completely out of character this is for her. Like everyone else, she has numerous shortcomings, but being careless is not one of them. She wouldn't intentionally do this, which is why I woke up in the middle of the night with the thought that I could be mistaken. No way. I texted her to let her know that everything was good, and that I would make the 4-hour drive down there to speak with her. In fact, she asked if she might call when she was awake. After doing so, she expressed her desire to return home. I informed her that I will be picking her up. Are we all right? She questioned. She broke down in tears as soon as I said yes. I informed her that we would have to discuss it, but that I was thrilled and eager to meet her. After that, she became a little more composed. Update 1. Hi there once more. I'm here to give you an update now that everything has calmed down and I believe I have all the facts. My wife waited for me on the sidewalk when I arrived at my in-laws' house. She threw herself at me, apologized repeatedly, and simply gave me a hug while expressing her regret. Before our conversation, I told her I was quite exhausted and wanted to take a nap when we got to her room. We held each other while we slept. When we woke up, our conversation felt like a never-ending cycle in which I asked her what had happened, and she responded that she was foolish and to blame. She insisted that since she had ruined a significant event in our lives, it didn't matter what occurred. She simply reiterated that she made a mistake and that nothing else mattered when I persisted in inquiring. She finally admitted that she didn't want to make excuses for me and that accepting responsibility and offering an apology was the proper course of action. After a while, I gave in and told her that everything was okay and that she was forgiven. Nevertheless, I wanted to speak with her buddy, who spent the entire day with her and purchased the pregnancy test for her. According to the friend's narrative, they freaked out for an hour and discussed how to surprise or tell me when my wife tested positive. When my mother-in-law finally arrived home, they all told her to talk about how to inform me. They made the decision to bring a few girlfriends around. The friend discussed all of their opinions, and I completely agree with her. She added that the group had discussed it, which I was unaware of at the time, and that they should all be silent since we hadn't chosen when to make the announcement. It seems that the one girl who shared it on Instagram did it intentionally. At that time, they were even talking about methods to tell me with her there, even though she had been instructed not to speak. When she uploaded the photo, another buddy had just arrived and was informed of the situation. She immediately decided to publish about it for whatever reason. She first said she was unaware that she was not permitted to post it when they approached her. After maintaining that falsehood for some time, she just told everyone she didn't give a damn and walked away. We haven't heard from her since she blocked everyone in the group. Whether she was jealous of my wife or something else, no one knows why she did it. Right now, we don't give a damn. We too have her blocked, and we do not wish to communicate with her. The friend's account was later verified by my sister. She thought my wife had just told everyone, and had forgotten to tell me when she originally called me with the details. However, after speaking with my mother-in-law and other friends, she shared the same tale with me. In addition, my mother-in-law, the friend I spoke with, and another acquaintance informed me that when I phoned my wife, she essentially said, "Screw it, I'm telling him right now," and she was quite eager to do so. During our return ride home, my wife and I spoke once more. Although I already knew the majority of the details, her side of the story was much the same as what my sister and the buddy told me. She apologized profusely once more and insisted that I was her top priority and that this was one of the worst things she had ever done. At her urging, we have a couples counseling session scheduled for next week. She feels that I need a place to completely express my thoughts, even though I don't think it's necessary. She fears that I'm holding everything inside and that I forgave her too quickly. To be honest, I'm already willing to forgive her and put this as a one-time incident because she cares about my sentiments. Additionally, we made our first visit to an obstetrician, not just because it's the correct thing to do, but also because I was warned by many about the dangers of miscarriages in the first trimester of pregnancy. The doctor indicated it was a little early for an appointment, and my wife's last period was approximately 6 weeks ago. However, after conducting numerous tests, they were able to determine that my wife is definitely pregnant. Everything appears to be going okay so far. My parents skipped my graduation for my sister's party, AITA, for cutting ties due to their neglect. Hello Reddit, I've been struggling for years with a family dilemma, and I need your opinion. Hold on tight, because this is a lengthy and intricate tale. My upbringing was typical of a suburban American family, but with a twist. The golden child has always been my older sister. It was evident from the time of my birth that my parents had a favorite, and it wasn't me. They wanted my sister to be attractive, athletic, and vivacious. And she was all three. She had the ability to enchant everyone, including neighbors and new classmates, giving them the sense that she was the epitome of perfection. Then there was me. I wouldn't describe myself as typical, but in my parents' eyes, I might as well have been invisible in comparison to my sister. I was constantly failing. They prevented me from being who I am, because they wanted me to appear and behave like her. I wasn't even allowed the luxury of attempting to find myself at a time when most children are having a hard time. Allow me to illustrate this with a few instances from our everyday life. My sister was always the main character in school plays when we were kids. Our parents would be in the spotlight, beaming with delight, and she would be given the lead part. I recall having a minor speaking role in the school play one year. I was ecstatic because I believed that this would be my opportunity to finally make them proud. However, my sister had a soccer match the night of the concert, so they were running late. They devoted the remainder of the evening to praising my sister's performance in her game, completely missing my contribution. The family pictures came next. We would take a family photo each year to use on our Christmas cards. With our parents' hands on her shoulders, my sister would always be the center of attention. Almost as an afterthought, I would be off to the side. I requested if I might stand in the center for once, when I was around 12 years old. It hurt more than words can describe when my mother laughed it off and said, "Oh honey, your sister is taller. It just looks better this way." As the abandoned kid who lived in their sister's shadow, all I wanted as a child was the approval and attention of my parents. My day used to be brightened by the smallest hint of positive feedback from them. I realize that's pathetic, but at the moment, it meant the world to me. It wasn't made any easier by my sister. I was bullied by her, and she was brilliant at it. She would never stop telling me that I would never be able to live up to her standards, and that our parents would never love me as much as they loved her. My self-esteem was influenced for years to come by everyday suffering. I have a clear memory of one occasion. I had just won a local writing competition at the age of 14. I was ecstatic, thinking, at last, I've accomplished something significant. My sister interrupted me at dinner to announce that she had been selected as the cheerleading squad's captain. Suddenly, my accomplishment was forgotten. My parents talked about how this would look fantastic on her college applications for the remainder of the evening. My victory in the event was never brought up again. The preference became much more obvious as we got older. Our parents purchased a brand new vehicle for my sister when she obtained her driver's license. 2 years later, when it was my turn, I was informed that if I needed to go someplace, I could borrow the old family minivan. Every time I attempted to bring up the obvious difference in treatment, I was told I was being jealous or overly sensitive. When I graduated from high school, that was the tipping point. I was able to graduate as valedictorian, in spite of all the difficulties. I couldn't wait to tell my parents about it, because it was the proudest time of my early life. As I delivered my speech, I pictured them grinning with pride, finally recognizing me for who I truly was. However, they failed to appear. It seems like my sister's celebration with her friends at our summer cottage was more significant than their younger daughter's high school graduation. They offered me a number of justifications, claiming that graduating from high school wasn't a huge issue. It meant everything to me. I had worked so hard for this moment, which I believed would finally bring them joy. The seats I had set up for the audience were empty, so I recall standing at the stage and looking around in the hopes of seeing their faces. As I spoke at the ceremony, my voice quivering a little, I understood that anything I accomplished would never be sufficient for them. Something inside of me broke that day. I made a choice that would alter my life's trajectory. I chose the college that was the furthest distant from my house. As far away from Ohio as possible, I applied to West Coast schools. My parents were taken aback when I told them I had decided to attend college after dinner one evening. They had presumed that I would attend the same public school where my sister had gone. "But that's so far away," objected my mother. "How will you manage on your own?" It was the first time I can recall them being concerned about me, although even then, there was some skepticism about my skills. College was enlightening. I was able to be myself for the first time in my life. My favorite subject was English, which I studied despite my parents' disapproval. My studies had been pushed to be practical, as they called it, like law or business. However, I refused to back down. I discovered how to live my life as I desired, ignoring their judgment. I really started to take off in college. I found my own strengths without having to constantly compare myself to my sister. I discovered that I had a knack for journalism after joining the campus newspaper. For the first time, I felt recognized and valued for my own abilities when my professors gave me positive feedback on my work. I also met my future husband while I was a college student. Instead of viewing me as someone's sister or daughter, he viewed me for who I was. We first connected in a literary class for general education. I volunteered to help him with an essay he was having trouble with. We spent hours discussing our lives, aspirations, and anxieties, in addition to the assignment. For the first time, I felt like I was being heard. My pals weren't truly friends. Usually, they merely approached me to learn more about my sister. However, I discovered in college the importance of true friendships, love, and all of their facets. It wasn't because of or in spite of my family that I met friends who liked me for who I was. We would encourage one another through the stress of term papers and examinations, go on road trips during breaks, and stay up late studying together. I didn't bother phoning my family once I graduated, as I was surrounded by my friends and my future husband. I was correct when I said that they would come up with another reason to skip it. They failed to show up, claiming that my father was unable to postpone a business trip. However, it didn't hurt as much this time. I was surrounded by members of my chosen family who genuinely cared about my progress. I moved in with my now husband, who had secured a position at a tech firm after graduating and obtained a job in marketing. All I ever heard from my parents, when they called at this time, was the news about my sister. I never had the stamina to tell them about my life, and they never bothered to inquire about me. Unless they were making negative comparisons to my sister, it seemed as though I didn't exist. One call stands out in my memory. About 6 months had passed since graduation. For someone just out of college, my promotion to junior manager was rather significant. I was thrilled and hoped that my folks would be pleased. I was excited to tell my mother the news when she called. "Oh, that's nice, dear. Did you hear your sister is expecting? We're going to be grandparents," she replied after a brief silence. My sister's pregnancy took up the remainder of the call. No one ever brought up my promotion again. As the years went by, my career took off. I rose through the ranks of the company, receiving honors and promotions. But my family didn't seem to care. My accomplishments were greeted with disdain, or worse, silence, while my sister's merest accomplishments were hailed as national feasts. I made an effort to stay in touch with my relatives. Yes, I did. I would occasionally fly back for Thanksgiving, send birthday cards, and make phone calls on holidays. However, each visit was identical. My sister and her expanding family would take center stage, and I would be relegated to the background. My parents hardly acknowledged me as they lavished affection on her kids, my niece and nephew. I remember one Thanksgiving in particular. I had taken a leave of absence from an important project at work and flown home. I hoped that things would be different this time. Without the typical drama, perhaps we could enjoy a pleasant family meal. How foolish I was. We talked about my sister's recent home improvement and her kids' academic success the whole evening. My father interrupted me in the middle of telling me about my recent promotion to senior manager to inquire about my sister's Christmas plans. My current spouse and I became engaged a few years later. Later that year, we were to get married. Surprisingly, my family expressed interest in the marriage when I told them. I dared to dream for a second that things could be turning around. However, when they learned that my fiancé came from a typical middle-class family instead of a wealthy one, their curiosity soon gave way to disappointment. They wanted me to marry into a family with great social standing, just like my sister did. You know your sister's husband is a surgeon, so there must be some good physicians or attorneys at your company. But honey, my mother continued, her voice brimming with disappointment, don't you think you could do better? Their suggestion left me stunned. They were still unable to accept my decisions and see me for who I was after all these years. The final person to find out about my wedding was my sister, who never held back. When voicing her dislike for both my fiancé and me, she always talked to me as if I were the dirt under her feet. However, I was insensitive to her reactions by that point because I had grown accustomed to it. She scoffed when I informed her about my fiancé's work and asked, a marketing manager? I suppose that's nice. Not everyone can marry a doctor after all. We proceeded with our wedding arrangements in spite of my family's response. With the assistance of my in-laws and friends, the wedding was organized. The parents I never had were my in-laws. I cried more than once because they loved me unconditionally and treated me like their own. They constantly promised me that they would support me because they were aware of my difficulties with my sister and parents. My future in-laws were kind, encouraging, and truly interested in my life. Everything I could have ever hoped for in a parent. They celebrated by taking us out to dinner after I informed them of my promotion. They listened to my worries about the wedding and my family's response without passing judgment and provided consolation and guidance. One of the conversations I had with my future mother-in-law almost made me cry. I hesitated when we were discussing wedding invitations because they were from my family. She asked what was wrong. After noticing my anxiety, she dropped the pen she was holding and took my hands in hers after I explained the circumstances. Sweetheart, she declared, family is more than blood. It's the people who love and support you, who celebrate your joys and comfort you in your sorrows. We may not have given birth to you, but you are our daughter in every way that matters. I couldn't adequately convey the significance of her words. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere, and that people loved and respected me for who I was, not how I compared to other people. Ultimately, my parents weren't happy with the way our wedding was organized. Only our closest friends and family were invited to the tiny, uncomplicated wedding. My fiancé and I both desired a simple wedding that would highlight and symbolize our relationship and love. However, my parents urged me to alter the specifics in order to accommodate a larger gathering with lavish decor. They contended that since I was their daughter, I ought to get married the way my sister did. Their last-minute suggestions irritated me, So I urged them to focus on me for once. This is my wedding, I firmly informed them. We want a small, intimate ceremony with the people who truly care about us. If you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't come at all. It was so quiet on the other end of the phone. My sister was clearly struggling to come to terms with the fact that my wedding day will be all about me. Every time we met, she made sure to demoralize me by making crude remarks about what a real wedding ought to be like. With a tone full of phony worry, she would ask, "Are you sure you want to do it this way? People might think you can't afford a proper wedding. It's not too late to let mom and dad help, you know." I was experiencing a mixture of trepidation and excitement. As the wedding day drew near, the family conflict was clouding what should have been the happiest day of my life. Even though I was excited to marry the love of my life, there was a lot of last-minute planning going on the week before the wedding. We were rushing about to finalize the details, check with vendors, and greet visitors from out of town. My phone was eerily silent the entire time. There were no texts from my sister wishing me luck or calls from my parents asking if I needed assistance. The quiet was a fresh source of worry as well as a relief. My phone eventually buzzed the night before the wedding, while we were sitting in our apartment surrounded by seating maps and wedding favors. My mother sent me a text. "Your father and I will see you tomorrow. Don't forget to wear the necklace your grandmother left you. No congrats. No show of enthusiasm or affection." Just a little reminder that I was already going to wear a family heirloom. That night, I slept with a knot in my gut, wondering what the next day might hold. Would I be accepted for who I am by my family at last? For a single day, might they put aside their criticisms and comparisons and just be pleased for me? Or was one preparing myself for one last heartbreaking letdown? I had no idea that the worst was still to come. I'm at a lost Reddit. The catastrophe on the wedding day and the events that transpired have caused me to doubt everything. Is it inappropriate of me to want my parents to attend my special day? Are years of neglect causing me to overreact? I want your honest thoughts. Is it time to break off relations with my family, or should I keep fighting for a relationship? I'll provide an update on the wedding day and its aftermath shortly. I would be very grateful for any guidance or assistance. I feel like I'm at a fork in the road and don't know which way to go. First update. I appreciate all of your support on my last post, Reddit. I've attached the update I promised regarding my wedding day and its events. On the morning of my wedding, I felt both anxious and excited. My mom called as I was getting ready. My heart leaped for any encouraging or loving words. Rather, she struck a devastating blow. "Honey, we won't be able to make it to the wedding. Your sister's child is having his birthday party today, and you know how important family is to us." I was taken aback. Instead of attending their daughter's wedding, my parents were picking a kid's birthday celebration. Don't be selfish, dear. I'm sure you understand. You don't even have children, so these things might not seem important to you, my mother stated in response to my complaint. I felt numb as I hung up. When my future mother-in-law heard, she reassured me right away. "Remember," she continued, "you have a whole room of people here who love you and are excited to celebrate with you today." At that moment, I resolved not to allow the absence of my family spoil my day. It was a lovely ceremony. Nothing else mattered until I saw the joy on my fiancé's face as I walked down the aisle. It meant so much to me that my father-in-law substituted for me during the father-daughter dance. Although there was a lot of love and happiness at the reception, my family's absence was always brought to mind by the vacant chairs where they should have been. My family had left me notes and missed calls when I got up the following morning. In fact, my sister had texted, "Hope you had a nice wedding. Sorry we couldn't make it, but the party was a blast." The final straw was that I dialed them, my voice trembling with determination and rage. I said, I'm done. To them. You've shown me where I stand in this family, and I'm done accepting it. From now on, you're no longer part of my life. I hung up and banned their numbers in spite of their protests. It was the most liberating thing I've ever done, but it was also one of the hardest. The next weeks have been difficult. In addition to feelings of relief, there are times of uncertainty and sorrow. The support from my husband and in-laws has been tremendous. In order to overcome years of emotional neglect, I have begun treatment. My marriage and our future together are my main priorities. One that isn't hampered by my family's rejection for the first time. Again, I want to thank Reddit for your support. I was able to defend myself because of it. I'm focusing on getting better and moving on for the time being, but I'll keep you updated if anything noteworthy occurs. Am I mistaken for severing my familial ties? Even though I no longer believe so, I would still value your opinions as I move forward in this new phase of my life. Second update. Reddit. I haven't posted in a month, and my family situation has gotten worse. This is what took place. My parents arrived at our flat without warning a week after I last posted. They demanded to know why I had severed ties with them. I carefully described how their absence at my wedding and years of neglect had caused me much pain. We've always loved you, my mom insisted. Everything we did was because we wanted the best for you. It was unbelievable to me. I explained to them how their partiality had damaged my self-worth, and how, as a result of their treatment of me, I had spent years believing I was unworthy. It was not warmly received by them. While my mother wept over me breaking her heart, my father accused me of being ungrateful. Fortunately, my in-laws showed up and requested that my parents vacate. When you're done with this tantrum, you know where to find us? My mother added as they departed. I was mistaken to believe that would be the end of it. I came across a social media post from my sister a few weeks later. Finally, got my dream bike. Thanks. Mom and Dad was the caption for a picture of her holding my old motorcycle. I was taken aback. I purchased that bike on my own after graduating from high school. I intended to bring it to my new residence following the wedding. Therefore, I had left it at my parents' house. My sister confirmed that our parents had given her the bike when I called her. My parents dismissed it when I brought it up, claiming that once I was married, I no longer needed it. My father told me, "Don't be selfish. Your sister needs it more than you do." That was the last straw. I threatened to take legal action if they didn't return the bike right away. They said I couldn't sue my parents, laughing. I answered, "Watch me," and hung up. My husband and I talked it over and ultimately agreed to get legal advice. She verified that we had a case. I own the motorcycle, which I had paid for myself. We have formally demanded in writing that the motorcycle be returned. We're ready to go to court if that doesn't work. I never imagined that I would have to consider taking my own parents to court. Yet, here we are. Am I going too far by bringing up attorneys, Reddit? Is it right for me to hold my ground, or should I let the motorcycle go for the sake of peace? As soon as my parents respond, I'll provide an update. I would be grateful for any guidance or assistance. All of this feels unreal, and I'm having a hard time figuring it out. I appreciate your support, everyone. You don't realize how much it matters. Third update. Hello, Reddit. I'm back to provide the resolution to this family drama, which has been going on for approximately 3 months. I want to thank each and every one of you for your unwavering support during this challenging road. A lot has transpired. Let us start by discussing the motorcycle's legal status. My parents originally disregarded the formal letter we wrote requesting its back. They appeared to believe that we were threatening to file a lawsuit. My father finally answered the phone when our lawyer called to follow up, but he only did so to deny our accusations and threatened to disown me if we went any further. We made the decision to bring a civil lawsuit. Although it was a difficult choice, we believed that we had to defend our position. It was a weird day when we learned that the lawsuit had been filed. I never thought that my parents and I would be involved in a court case, but here we were. To our astonishment, my parents' attitude drastically altered once they recognized how serious we were. They wanted to talk things out and stay out of court all of a sudden. Their plan to sort things out, though, was to use guilt tripping to get me to dismiss the lawsuit. My father would alternate between being angry and trying to manipulate me by saying things like, "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us." My mother called and sobbed about how I was destroying the family over a silly bike. I remained steadfast. I clarified that the issue was no longer simply about the motorcycle, but also about limits, respect, and realizing that they had no right to give away my belongings. My parents eventually consented to return the motorcycle after realizing they would have to appear in court. Nonetheless, they demanded payment for my sister's gift from them. As long as I regained my property, I was okay with this. It was a stressful day when I went to pick up the motorcycle. Fortunately, my sister wasn't present, but my parents were aloof and unfriendly. My mother tried to guilt me one final time as I was getting ready to depart. "I hope you're happy now," she said. "You've gotten what you wanted. But at what cost?" After giving her a quick glance, I answered, "The cost of my self-respect and the realization that I deserve better treatment from my family." After that, I felt both sad and free as I went out on my bike. I've come to the conclusion that I need to take a total vacation for my family as a result of this event. I haven't made this decision lightly, but I think it's essential for my well-being and mental health. I've been negatively impacted by the years of favoritism toward my sister, the ongoing manipulation of my emotions, and the disdain for my accomplishments and sentiments. I've tried to gain their acceptance for far too long, only to be let down and hurt all the time. I've benefited greatly from my therapist's assistance in processing these emotions. She has taught me that putting my own health first, even if it means separating from toxic family members, is okay. She has also assisted me in identifying the emotional abuse patterns that I have accepted throughout the years. I formally told my parents that I've decided to sever all contact. I wrote them a letter outlining my justifications and requesting that they honor my request to avoid communication. Their reaction was expected. A mix of fury, guilt-tripping, and attempts to downplay how I felt. However, I was able to ignore it for the first time. I've come to understand that my value is not determined by what they think of me. Naturally, my sister has sided with our parents. I've blocked her on all social media sites to stop her from spreading hateful remarks about ungrateful siblings and the importance of family. The upside is that this experience has strengthened my bonds with my husband and in-laws. They have provided me with constant love and support, making them my rock. In particular, my mother-in-law has been amazing. Whenever I needed a consoling embrace or a sympathetic ear, she was there. With the drama in my family no longer a burden, my husband and I have been concentrating on creating our life together. We've been discussing creating a family, and for the first time, I'm thrilled about the idea without having to worry about constantly being compared to others or living up to unrealistic expectations. I've also been putting a lot of effort into my hobbies and job. Painting has been immensely therapeutic and has helped me rediscover aspects of myself that I had repressed for years. I've always wanted to try painting but never did because my parents didn't think it was a useful skill. We've been hanging out a lot with friends who have grown to be like family. Being around by upbeat, encouraging people has completely changed the way I view the world. In retrospect, I can say that this entire experience has been both transforming and extremely painful. I've learned to prioritize my own well-being, set limits, and advocate for myself. I've come to understand that family is made up of those who love and support you without conditions, not just blood ties. I want to reassure those who may be in similar circumstances. It's acceptable to keep your distance from poisonous family members. Prioritizing your happiness and mental well-being is okay. You should be supported, loved, and respected. And sometimes it means starting your own family. I would want to express my gratitude to this community for all of your help and guidance during this trip. You have no idea how much your encouraging comments have meant to me. They have made me believe in myself and have given me courage in the most trying times. I feel optimistic about the future as I finish this chapter of my life. I'm excited about the life I'm creating, a life full of love, respect, and true happiness. But I'm also sad about the family ties I've lost. Once again, thank you, everybody. I'm thankful to know that this community is available in case I ever need assistance, even if I hope I won't have to provide any more updates concerning family drama. Am I the asshole for ruining an engagement by revealing the truth about my horrible ex from 10 years ago? Original post. A little backstory is needed, so please stick with me. Growing up, I 527 had a childhood friend, Angie, 47, who was as close as a real sister. We spent entire weekends at each other's place, celebrated family events, etc. From 6 years old till 18 years old. Elle even lived at her place in second grade, while my parents went to a nasty divorce. I learned to speak some Russian, as she is Russian, and she learned to speak some Spanish. Needless to say, her older brother and little sister were like a family to me. During our teenage years, she had her two male best friends, one whom she started dating, and another one, Nico, now 29, who was Russian as well, whom I started dating at 17. Growing up, I had issues with a heart condition. I won't bore you with the details, but I had to take a lot of meds, but got healthier starting from the 16th. I didn't have to take them daily, but only when my heart rate became irregular. But then immediately, as it would become extremely painful, my heart would cramp. I would start to hyperventilate. All my friends knew this, Nico included, and that I would black out if my meds got taken with alcohol. I didn't smoke much or drink much growing up as a result, since I was worried about my health and only did drink at home or in a safe setting. Legal drinking age is 16 here, and I only drank wine or beer if at all. I had my first time with Nico at 17, and when my parents stayed at a retreat 2 weeks later, he came over to have a date night. I did drink one glass of wine, but started having health issues, later resulting in me taking my meds and being unconscious. I was a bit sore the next morning, but didn't think much about it. 2 weeks later, I'm informing Nico that I'm late on my period, and he starts to panic, confessing he had sex with me while I was unconscious. We had it before, so he didn't think much about it. Apparently, he didn't have a condom, but since I was on the pill, he figured it was all right. And he also didn't come in me, but in a tissue. I felt violated and disgusted by myself. I didn't know how to describe this, and only told Angie about it. I was an utter mess for a few years, and wasn't able to have sex again until 2 years later. I didn't remember any of it, but was too ashamed to go to my mom or anybody else. I didn't think of it as rape back then. I was too young to really understand what and how I was violated, and Angie told me, it's all right. I should break up if I feel bad about it. But we were in a relationship and did have sex before. I broke up with him the following day, and apparently, he cried about his broken heart to her. As Nico and Angie were close and hanging out together a lot, they started dating a few months afterwards, and I had to see him every time when visiting her. I told her I'm not able to see him, but she didn't understand where I'm coming from. The contact stopped, and we haven't texted or seen each other in years. I still followed her and her family, and saw that her brother is expecting his first child. As I was extremely close with her family, I just commented on the Insta post, expressing my gratitude when he reached out to me. I missed his wedding, but he wanted to ask if I would be interested in joining the baby shower, as it's been years, and we've been extremely close before. He told me I was like a third little sister. I just asked if Nico will be attending as well, as Angie and him have been dating for 9 years now, and he said yes. I didn't elaborate much, but just expressed that I'll send a small present if he can give me his current address, but won't be attending. He kept on pestering me what exactly happened all those years ago and why I'm not in their lives anymore. Angie told her family I'm not able to see her with an ex of mine, but her brother thought there's more behind it. This is when I think I could be the asshole. I told him the truth about what happened back then, and while I didn't know it at 17, I know now that this was rape, and I named it as such. I didn't receive any message back from him, but a few days later, Angie reached out to me furious. Nico had planned to propose during the baby shower, but Angie's brother is against it now, having learnt why I stopped the contact. She loves Nico and will stay with him, but by doing so, her brother said she is no longer a part of his life, as he doesn't want his little baby girl in the same family as a rapist. Since then, I've been getting messages from old high school acquaintances telling me I should have ignored it and not told anybody. Since I didn't speak up back then, I lost the right to do so now, and am a horrible person for ruining somebody's life over some stuff he did 10 years ago, when he himself was a child as well. Am I truly the asshole for speaking up? AITA has no consensus bot. OP was NTA relevant comments. OP responds to multiple comments about how things are wrong, and she could speak up. P. I understand now how wrong it has all been, and that it's rape. But we grew up in a small town with approximately 5,000 people, and I honestly don't know which way it would have gone if I would have spoken up. He was 19 back then, 2 years older, and everybody is in everybody's business. It would have made sound back then, like it does now. They all still live there, and it has made its rounds. That's why so many of our old classmates are reaching out. Most of those who still live there have left me furious messages. They have known Nico for all their life and are standing by him. I moved out when I was 20, my mom shortly after, and didn't stay in touch most. It still breaks my heart to get such a furious response from people who are my whole childhood. And thank you for all your best wishes. I genuinely appreciated OP did not ruin Nico's life. He did this himself. OP. I understand that what happened is on him. The backlash I am getting is because he apparently is not that person anymore, and in something he did as a teenager, according to Angie, should not ruin his life, and is in no way related to the daughter. Her brother will have. I don't know if he will ever act out or do something, but it doesn't invalidate what happened to me. So thank you for confirming this. I just can't stop feeling bad about this having so many consequences. While I do not want to see Nico or Angie, I have made my peace with what happened to me back then, commenter. But why are they attacking you and not the brother? You are not the one objecting to the marriage. Just feels like misogyny and victim blaming, TBH. Oh. P. I guess because he is family, and I'm the outsider who ruined their family. I have been getting so many messages from people who didn't even have my number back then. I'm blocking the best I can. It's just hard to not let these comments get to your heart, commenter. NTA. They got together so soon after the two of you broke up. I can't help but wonder if your friend was convincing you to break up with Nico, because she was hoping to get with him all along. P.O. I honestly don't believe it. They've known each other for years, and she broke up with her boyfriend 2 weeks before I broke up with Nico. It was a 5K town, even adding the people our age from nearby villages. Our school had 500 people attending, hence the options are very limited. OP on getting therapy in order to heal from her past trauma. OP. I was in therapy for 2 years and found peace with what happened to me. I am lucky as I have no memory of it, but that didn't make it easier. It took me 2 years to be able to have any form of sexual contact again, but I am okay now. It's a part of me, but it's a part I can live with. Honestly, thank you for your kind words. OP. On her health issues at the time when the incident happened. O. It's not drunk, blacked out. My medicine back then was supposed to lower my heart rate extremely as I would have a racing heartbeat and my body would start to shut down. Hyperventilating, my heart not being able to follow such strong use, and basically tripping over the high heart rate. My heart would start skipping beats, then not being able to follow my thin blood, which flows faster than regular one. And the skipping would be the painful one, as it would start to cramp up. I'm sorry, I'm not able to explain it better. English is not my primary language, and I lack the medical vocabulary to fully describe it. The pill slowed my heartbeat and general body functions, thus making me extremely tired. I'd mixed it with alcohol. It would basically act like a super strong sleeping pill. My body could be thrown off a cliff, and I wouldn't wake up. I did give consent for the first time we had sex, but that was our first and only time. I don't know if we would have had sex back then, if I would have been conscious as I didn't like it, being my first time and all, and wasn't that eager to repeat it. I don't think calling it rape is wrong, but what I had issues was, if I may should have approached this subject more sensible. In that way, I can understand that I ruined their engagement plans for next week, or his surprise of update 1. First of all, I am immensely thankful for all the people who took the time to not only read through my story, but also comment. I read every single comment and tried to respond to as many as possible. It gave me a little bit of hope of compassion for victims of rape, and also the courage to not cave to the backlash I received. Mental update. Reading all the messages defending my choices on speaking up made me realize how insecure I was about what I am allowed to do and how much I was trying to make it right to other people besides myself. This especially included Nico and Angie. All of you are right. If Nico had changed, he would have apologized, reached out, or tried to make amends in some way. Either when word got to him from his brother-in-law or at some earlier point in his life. My former best friend Angie should have been able to feel some sort of compassion if she had any respect for me as a human being or the time we spent together. Her reaction showed that I shouldn't hesitate in my actions. I went to therapy from 21 onwards and thought I moved on from the rape as best as I could, but I realized how ashamed I still am almost 10 years later about an incident that wasn't my fault at all. I was ashamed to speak up back then, and afraid that people around me would look differently at me. And somehow I still felt bad about speaking up today. So I am trying to own what happened to me now and not apologize for other people's behaviors, especially as they don't even show me respect. What happened since then? I archived every nasty message I got on WhatsApp so I wouldn't have to read them, but would have the proof if needed at a later point. Angie's mom called me the following day of the incident, crying. I shouldn't have answered the phone, but during the 10 years of friendship, I saw her as an aunt, almost a second mom. She always joked that, while her children would run around the house doing whatever, I would always take the time to drink tea and talk with her, showing her more love and time than her actual children. While she said she's sorry for what has been and for what I went through as a child, she couldn't believe that I would ruin Angie's happiness over something like that. With Angie's brother refusing to have Nico as part of the family, and Angie standing by Nico's side, it's divided their family, and she is heartbroken. She has grown to love Nico like family as well, and has known him for nothing more than a considerate young man, who she knows will make her daughter happy. It wasn't nasty names or angry talk just a heartbroken mother who faked to acknowledge my pain and saw the fault in me. Angie's mom tried to get me to apologize or to take it back, but I refused as I don't see the fault in me. With everything that has happened, I believe that Nico hasn't changed and is just hiding it better somehow. He can see how people are standing by him and supporting his behavior so he won't have to change. And that is something I didn't want to indulge. Angie's mom not even one used the word rape, and I tried to correct her every time she talked about it, trying to name it for her to understand better. But she would just start sobbing more, and it didn't make sense for us to continue to talk. Angie's mom used to be in contact with mine for some time, and she reached out to her after our talk. I was afraid that my mom would find out, since she's from a more conservative background. We had a long talk, and I didn't get to see her physically yet, but she apologized for not being there for me or not making me feel like I can talk to her. I tried to calm her as best as I could, but when she asked me if my current partner knows I was used like that, I got angry. She was scared my partner would leave me if he found out, implying it was something that made me less precious or appealing. When she asked me to keep it a secret from our family abroad and in our country, I hung up. She was acting exactly the way I was afraid she would, as if it's something shameful. It was especially hard, as I am trying my best to move away from the feeling of shame. She has since apologized, but it's clear that her view of me has changed. I don't yet know how to deal with it, but that's something to worry about in the next few weeks. As some of you suggested, I wrote Angie's brother, Sven, again, and apologized for the mess. But I'm glad that it is out in the open, and how proud I am that he's defending his family. I asked if his old email is still working, as I would just send a gift card. He didn't respond, but I got a message from his wife 2 days ago. She thanked me for speaking up and informing them about Nico. There were apparently a few moments that made her uncomfortable, some jokes Nico made, and in retrospective she can see why. Sven apparently informed her the moment he got my initial text, and both of them have since seen Angie but not Nico. She refuses to be in the same room or house as him, and the same goes to their unborn daughter. Sven and Angie's mom has been at their place multiple times to beg to forgive Nico, and Sven caved a little. Angie and Nico will get married. Sven will attend, but his wife will not. He is allowed in the family, but not in contact with either Sven's wife or daughter. Those restrictions are not for Angie. Sven was suffering trying to ease his mother's worries and was not able to take a stand and cut them out completely. This is a compromise they made without his wife's approval, and she told me she's trying her best to cut them out of their life indefinitely. She wanted to move back, closer to her family as well, and thinks this is a perfect opportunity, but isn't sure if she can follow through. His wife told me she's terribly sorry for all the issues that came my way, and it has been a lot trying to handle the situation on their side. Sven knows it's not my fault, but he doesn't want contact. It's hard for him to talk or see my name, because even though he knows I'm not the guilty party, in some way I was the bearer of bad news, and he sees me as the start of all this drama. She told me a few times that neither believe I'm the bad guy. They just are tired with everything, and it's just been extremely hard on them. That's all that has happened so far. I am frustrated about how everything came to be. It feels like Nico will just continue with his life without having to be remorseful. I didn't want him to suffer, but I think some part of me wanted to at least receive some kind of apology for all the suffering I went through afterwards. I'm having to deal with my mother and her changed, shameful view on me. And even though I'm happy it's all out, it's extremely hard to stand by my choices. My partner and my best friends both have been my shoulder to cry on during this ordeal. My best friend was especially enraged for me, and I am extremely grateful to have both by my side. Right now, I'm just emotionally drained, but I'm sure it will be better once a few weeks pass. Comments, Commenter 1. You spoke up and did the right thing. If others can't handle the truth, that's their problem. Keep focusing on your healing and support. Commenter 2. NTA. Unfortunately, it's a tale as old as time. The woman is blamed, and the rapist gets off without a blemish. Only by speaking the truth over and over will the situation improve. And when the boomers die off. Commenter 3. 100% the right thing. What you did may keep Nico from attacking someone else, or may encourage one of his other victims to step up. You never know how much people like you help everyone else. When you stand up and speak out, and are not ashamed of what was not your fault, but will point the finger at the one to shame. You're making the world a better place. I'm sorry for the family Nico misled, and the wife who was foolish enough to stay with him. But it's no longer your business. You did the right thing, and it's going to help others. If no one else says it to you, thank you for doing all this. You are amazing. Update 2. My first post was 3 months ago, and this one will be my last update for now. It is not a good one, but I sincerely wish to leave it all behind me. That includes distancing myself from this Reddit account. These posts help me let go of my anger. Similar to a journal, and I am grateful for all the people who are enraged with me. I hope to open it again someday, with a final happy update. But for now, every little pop-up is a reminder of the anxiety I am still dealing with. And I do not have the energy to deal with this topic outside of my therapy anymore. Short summary, for those who don't want to read the old post. Nico raped me when I was his girlfriend 10 years ago. I didn't see it as rape back then, as I was unconscious. Afterwards, I broke up with him. Shortly after, my best friend Angie from elementary school started dating him, and they have been together for almost 10 years. I couldn't bear seeing him, and cut contact with her and her family, with whom I was really close. Her brother Sven reached out to me 3 months ago, after I left a short congratulation on a pregnancy picture with his wife. He invited me to their baby shower, and I declined. After a lot of back and forth about him asking me and being suspicious as to why the contact broke off in the first place, and why I refused to be in the same space as his sister's boyfriend, I confessed what happened back when I was 17. Afterwards, his family had a huge fight with him wanting to cut Nico out of their lives for being a rapist, and his mom and sister standing by Nico. I was the scapegoat, and received a log of hurtful messages from both their friends and former classmates. They called me out on ruining a man's life based on a childish mistake. Nico was 19 back then, and even Angie's mom reached out to me. I was left to pick up my life, my mom being more ashamed than understanding, and started therapy again. I removed almost everybody tied to that incident. Sven, Angie, Nico, their family, old classmates, and only kept contact with old classmates who send me messages of support. Update 2. I work in a very specialized field. To get the proper qualification, it takes on average 6 to 8 years, bachelor, master, and then state bar to be allowed to practice. While it is not very competitive, not a lot of people choose this profession, and it is highly sought after. My current company paid for my master's and my extensive course as preparation for the bar exam, and I have been doing well there. My HR department called me 2 months ago. Apparently, they have been getting a lot of outside calls from Angie's mother and other relatives, saying I am involved in a Me Too scandal and being a liability for the company, as I don't have issues ruining the lives of men. How they could imagine this could change anything I do not understand. I work for a global company. They have known me for years. I never had any issues prior, and quite frankly, they do not care. However, they have been getting frustrated amount of calls, and apparently even reached out to the police, and the calls have stopped since. Nonetheless, they reached out to me to check on my mental well-being, offering to give me paid leave till it settles a little bit. and offering company-paid therapy. Therapy is covered by my country's health insurance, but it is tricky to get one without waiting time. But I already had my old one on retainer and started going right after the incident. They made it clear that they invested a good amount of money in me and do not wish to lose me. I was ashamed that this part of my private life slipped into my professional one. It started to influence the career I worked hard for years to build, and while my company assured me that it would not affect the workload and clients I'm getting, word got around, and it was clear for my colleagues that I am going through something nasty, and the company does not want to deal with it. All this stress and anxiety led me to hyper-focus on my work. I took on whatever I could, paranoid that another call would come, and, for whatever reason, the company would move me to a dead-end department where my career would basically be over. At the same time, I started looking into different companies who would be able to buy me out. As I am tied to my current company for 5 years after graduation, 3 more are left, and I got a management position in a rival company with a huge salary jump. I couldn't be happy about it. I was just relieved I wouldn't get the pity looks from my colleagues anymore. I went to the police with all the hateful messages and the HR protocol with the call history and got a restraining order for Angie's mom. Should she contact my new company again? I have a public LinkedIn. It is needed for my job. At least I have some sort of proof that her words hold no meaning. I got asked if I want to pursue the rape but decided against it. It would open the whole ordeal again. I don't have proof, besides Nico and Angie not denying it, and quite honestly was afraid of what it would to my career. I did keep contact with a good friend of mine who grew up in the same small town, but moved away 5 or so years ago. As we share a Nintendo Switch online family account, so we tend to be in contact at least once a year for a short phone call, when she has to send me the money for the subscription, and we just tend to make a phone call with updates out of it. Yesterday was one of those days, and the whole Nico thing came up. While she didn't hear it directly, her mom is still living in the small town and reached out to her, asking if I'm all right. She expressed her disapproval about how everything came to be, as she was close with Angie back in the days as well, and remembered how close we were and how often we spent time together, like sisters. She informed me that 2 months later, 7 baby girls were born, and while neither Nico or Angie were seen in any of the pictures or stories with the baby, a month ago, Angie and Nico had an engagement party. Both Sven, the baby, and his wife participated and are in the family pictures. I remember how enraged Sven's wife was, and how she told me she herself felt I was comfortable with Sven. Now it is all forgotten and forgiven. Nico's parents own a few houses, and gave Angie and Nico a house close to their home, and Sven and his wife apparently bought a house in the same street. It is as if nothing happened at all. Listening to my friend telling me the updates, I'm honestly not sure if I should have asked her to not tell me anything. I just feel empty and betrayed. Not by Angie. She made her choice. Not by Sven. It is his sister, and at the end of the day when he asked me what happened, and then didn't have the decency to answer me, because he saw me as the one who ruined his family, it was clear that the truth didn't matter. Not by Sven's wife, who has a baby girl, and innocent daughter, who she should protect as a mother, even though she told me she would do her best to keep her daughter away from Nico. But just by life. I fought to have it all behind me, just to have this old wound ripped open again 3 months ago, when Sven kept plastering me. I got hate messages, but knowing that maybe someone would be hesitant towards Nico when he showed strange behavior, made me feel like maybe I did right. Maybe by speaking up I helped a girl out to not be raped. My own mother was ashamed of what happened to me, told me I was to keep it quiet so my family abroad wouldn't get to hear it, just for it all to be all good again for Nico. After everything that happened these last 3 months, I truly understand why victims of rape chose not to speak up. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. As a victim of the same type of abuse, though not RSAP from a former romantic partner, you are worth more than you think. You do not need to suffer in silence or shame. You didn't do anything wrong or anything to be ashamed of. I am so proud of you for telling your truth. From one survivor to another, you are worthy of love, acceptance, and happiness. Life hasn't betrayed you, even though it feels like the world and everyone in it has turned their back on you. People do care you matter, and you will outshine the shadows of your past when you find the courage to embrace the future with open arms. I believe in you, and I am proud of you. Keep being you, commenter 2. I hope you get to heal and have no shame. From the interaction with your mother, she sounds Latin, which can be very tricky with this stuff. Nevertheless, the reaction is not on you, but on her. Deutsche? I am unsure if so, but in some small tiny towns, they are very backwards. All that doesn't matter. You get to deal with this at whatever rhythm you feel comfortable. You are not used. You are not less than. You are a woman that has survived. I send you a big hug. Oh. Yes? My mom is Latin, but I grew up in a small village with maybe 5,000 people. My grandpa used to be a pastor, which makes it so much harder. Even though my mom has been living in Germany for 30 years. Speaks perfectly, even with a local dialect. She's not progressive. It doesn't help that the small village itself isn't progressive either. I moved out at 18 and never looked back. In her eyes, it is my fault, since I had a boyfriend at 17, and now I am damaged goods because of the rape. We don't talk about her hurtful words anymore, and she is trying her best to be more understanding. But at the end of the day, it is internalized. I know I am not less understanding, but at the end of the day, it is internalized. I know I am not less. But after everything surfaced, the shame, the anxiety, and less just came back. After I worked years to get over it. It will take time. I'm sure I'll get there again, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. My partner is telling me over and over again, reminding me of my worth. And I am sure one of these days it's going to stick. Thank you for your words. I found my Bill's Reddit account and discovered his dark plans for my family and my sister. What should I do? Original post. First and foremost, I will not be sharing BIL's username. I know this will cause most people to call this post fake, but his account has a lot of private information about many members of my family, including what are essentially dox bins and other private info. He doesn't know I know about this account, and I don't want anyone to go to his account to leave comments or message him. I'm 21 feet. My sister, Jane 28, has been with John, 27M, for 2 years. I found his account totally randomly. I googled his name as he's a journalist, and found a Reddit account with the same name. Think John Doe is dead 9,997? I clicked on it and found tons of Reddit posts, ranting about his girlfriend's family, mainly her little sister. At first, I thought I just came across a random, disturbed individual, but clicking on the post revealed more. Both my sister and I have unique names. Not super rare, but uncommon enough that they're noticeable in a list of names, and neither of us have met anyone with the same names as us. Plus, our surnames aren't super basic either. Think Aurora Fernsby. Fake, but similar name to myself. He also mentions enough personal details for it to be undeniably him. I wouldn't be writing this unless I was 99% sure. The posts are all either posted to vent/rant subs, or straight to his Reddit page. They all have 0 to 3 upvotes, and a few comments spread across, from what I can tell to be 100 posts. They're all mostly complaining about Jane, me, or our mother. The most concerning post is about me though. I have a varied past with men, mainly influenced by SA. I'm in therapy, but it has made me more weary around men. I do, you don't know. This apparently enrages John. In this post, he details how he plans to offer to drive me home next I visit them. But instead of taking me home, he'll detour and take the scenic route through the country lanes in our town. He says he wants to make me afraid enough that I'll do something to her. But after 15 or so minutes, he'll turn around and drive me home, therefore showing me that not all men are creeps and want to hurt her. His logic seems to be that since he acted weird but didn't hurt me, it should click in her brain that not all men are bad. The post is very long, like scrolling down for 15 seconds long, but he rants about how it's unfair that I flinch around him when he makes big gestures or yells at the TV, because he'd never do anything. He says he can fix me more than my therapist. A lot of the post is weird, Inslee talking points. I was bawling while reading the whole thing. There is one comment telling him to get help, but John just responds, I don't need help. She does. His comment history is also concerning. A lot of weird Inslee talking points, which doesn't make sense as he has a girlfriend. I'm not super versed in incel ideology. A lot of stuff about women's roles in relationships, society, other races, ethnicities, religions, etc. I'm terrified of John. We weren't close before, but we didn't hate each other. To me, he was just a grown man with vastly different interests, and we would never mesh cleanly. Now I don't know what to think. My mind is frazzled. I'm going to tell my sister, but I don't know how. I have screenshots of everything, links, etc. etc. I just don't know how to lay it all out. Also, I need coping mechanisms. I'm in a constant state of pre-panic attack. I can feel it in my chest, but it's not tipping over into a full panic attack, which is making me genuinely crazy. Sorry for the long post. Thanks in advance. Edit. As of 2 hours ago, I made my mom and uncle aware of what I found. Every screenshot, screen recording, and link. My sister is currently on a work trip, so we're waiting for her to come back in 2 days. His account is still up as of 20 minutes ago. Thanks for all your advice. Mom, uncle, and I are figuring out the best way to tell my sister. Some of OP's comments. Commenter. Oh, I did not want to be the first comment here. This is so much to unpack. Do you think your sister will believe you? Talk to your parents' family first. They should hear about your fear before they hear from your sister that you're talking shit. Is your sister safe? I have no clue what else to say, other than I'm gonna come back in case anyone has coping mechanisms for your pre-panic attack thing. I'm experiencing the same thing, and it's also driving me insane. Pre-panic attack is a good way to describe it. I've been struggling with it for years, but there's no medical term for it, so thanks for giving it a name. OP. Is your sister safe? This is why I want to tell her as soon as possible, because I don't know. Not anymore, anyway. They seem happy together, but now I'm rethinking everything. Thanks for your advice. Commenter, why is he so obsessed with you? He has a girlfriend, and prefers to vent about you. Are you that close to him? He is not in a normal place mentally. Show the text to your sister and mother. He can be abusive to your sister. OP. We're not close. I live closer to my sister than any of our family, So I see him fairly often. But I never go to see him. He's usually just there. Which is fair because it's his home too. But I never go with the reason for hanging out with John. Just my sister. We're not close. We don't have much in common but get along well enough. I had no interest in being his friend or anything before, for many obvious reasons, but especially now. I have no idea why he's so obsessed with me. It's freaking me out. Commenter. How does he know so much about your trauma? Who told him? That's a very important question to solve beforehand. Oh, P. Last year when I was essayed by my ex, I ended up calling John to pick me up because my ex lived in a different city and was supposed to give me a ride back. I had a breakdown in his car and told him what happened. I hadn't intended to tell anybody about what happened, but I couldn't keep it in. Also, my sister and I both witnessed abuse from our father, which I'm sure she told John about. And he correctly assumed I was also affected. Commenter. Does this mean your parents aren't safe advocates in this situation? Whoopee. No, not at all. I'm planning on telling Mom too. The no telling anyone about the essay comment was more of a spur of the moment traumatized and mortified 19-year-old whoopee to a troll. Included because she had a great response. But I don't think all men are evil. John literally just projected that onto me. He wrote that assumption in a post where he detailed, graphically, how he wanted to make me fear for my safety to fix me. Because he's upset, I have trauma and CPSD. And I'm somehow as creepy as he is and terrifying? I would love a deep dive into how you can come to that conclusion, because reading some Reddit posts don't feel the same as what John is doing planning to. Update post. As I mentioned in my last post, I had made my mom and uncle aware of the situation. We all agreed that waiting for Jane to come home from a work trip to tell her was the best course of action. When she got back, we sat her down to explain everything. I showed her the screenshots, the posts, and walked her through everything John had said. She was quiet at first, just reading through the messages with this shocked look on her face. She started accusing me of overreacting or somehow getting the situation wrong. She said that maybe John was just venting and didn't actually mean any of it. She also suggested that I might be reading too much into his post because of my past trauma. My mom and uncle tried to step in and back me up, but Jane wasn't having it. She kept saying that we were blowing things out of proportion and that we didn't understand John like she does. At this point, she was getting really upset, and we were all talking over each other. Then Jane said that I've always been distant from John, and that maybe he felt uncomfortable around me because of how I act. At that point, I was done. I made it clear that if she decided to stay with him, I would have to limit my contact with both of them. My mom and uncle backed me up on this, and we all said that we couldn't trust John to be part of our lives anymore after seeing what he wrote. Jane stormed out of the house after that. She's barely spoken to me since, except for a couple of cold texts saying she needs to process the situation. On Monday, it's Wednesday today, Jane showed up at my door, completely unannounced. She looked like she hadn't slept, and the first thing she did was apologize. I was shocked, because I wasn't expecting her to come around so quickly. She told me that after she left, she couldn't stop thinking about the posts, and she started going back over everything in her head. She said she told John about the situation, and when I went to check, all his stuff has been deleted. This annoyed me and my mom, who was on the phone, as we told Jane to keep quiet for safety reasons. Luckily, I have all the evidence saved. She said that John had blocked me on everything to preserve his career, and that he was super pissed off with me for stalking him. He even told my sister that the account wasn't him, rather someone at work who hates him. I obviously don't know everything that happened between them, but it's caused a rift between them. I've moved in with my uncle, for the time being, as I was afraid of John showing up on these first few nights. We looked into legal options about the post, but found nothing that would help us. My uncle said he's going to help me get in contact with his work, but I'm scared of John's reaction if I do that. As of now, my sister isn't totally settled on leaving John, so I've gone LC with her. She said her reasons for staying with John is because she just can't see John acting like this. Luckily, I have friends and family who are on my side. Sorry this update is kind of bleak. My mother always defended my older brother, but when he stole my younger brother's fiancée, our family could never be mended. My mother wants me and my brothers to overlook the fact that our younger brother's fiancée was stolen by our cunning golden child older brother. I never imagined that my family would fall apart in this way. A year ago, I would have laughed if someone had predicted that my elder brother, Caleb, would do something so heinous. My mother has always led us to believe that Caleb is the golden child, the one who did everything correctly. However, I can't stop thinking about how we got here as I sit here in my apartment and relive the nightmare that occurred only a few weeks ago. Logan's wedding, or what was meant to be Logan's wedding, was the beginning. Logan, my younger brother, is the most sincere individual I've ever encountered. He is a gentle, considerate man who would give you his last dollar without hesitation. We were all overjoyed when he proposed to Avery. Avery seemed to love Logan as much as he loved her, and she was intelligent and humorous. Together, they were ideal. They were one of those couples you can tell is meant to be. And then there was Caleb. Even now, the details remain unclear. Logan and Avery were choosing flowers and completing the guest list one week. Avery was canceling the wedding the next week. Logan arrived at my door completely broken, which is why I can still clearly recall that day. His eyes were red-rimmed from sobbing, and his face looked pallid. He informed me that Avery had broken up with him. She simply stated that she couldn't carry it out without providing an explanation. I initially believed it might be chilly feet. Yes, that does happen. Weddings are a stressful event. Then, however, the truth was revealed. Avery and Caleb, who was supposed to be Logan's best man, appeared at a family BQ less than 3 days later. We were all invited over for family time by my mom, Linda. I wanted to see how Logan was doing because I hadn't seen him since he arrived at my door crying. Caleb holding Avery's hand as they walked into the backyard, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, is something I will always remember. The whole yard fell silent, as if someone had put life on hold. As I tried to take in what I was seeing, I glanced at Avery and then at Caleb. What on earth is this? Louder than I intended, I asked. The king of smug smiles. Caleb shrugged as if it didn't matter. He declared, Avery and I are now together. Thankfully, Logan wasn't around, but my sister Riley dropped the pitcher of lemonade she was pouring. The patio's glass broke. I couldn't read my mother's expression as she looked at Caleb, but it wasn't one of shock. For me, that was the first warning sign. Linda had forewarned no one, but she instinctively knew this was happening. You're kidding, I responded, trembling. Avery refused to look at me, so I hoped this was some terrible joke. Her face reddened with guilt, but she continued to stare at the grass. I've detested Caleb's calm-down expression since we were young. In a frustratingly casual tone, he stated, It's complicated, Mason, but everyone will benefit from this. For everybody? I lost my temper. How about Logan? You just took your brother's fiancé. But what about that? The term stole made Avery wince, but Caleb didn't even pause. The relationship between her and Logan didn't work out. This wasn't planned, he said. I made sure he didn't finish, though. Too furious to even look at him, I bounded away. Riley came into the kitchen after me. Did you see Mom? She said, trembling. She said nothing at all. She seems to be fine with this. The second warning sign was that Caleb had always held a special place in Linda's heart. Being the eldest, he made the family proud with his corporate career and college degree. Logan and I, on the other hand, were just Logan and me. I used to make a joke about us being the family's spare parts, but it didn't feel humorous anymore. I gave Logan a call later that evening. I asked him if he was aware of Avery and Caleb. He didn't. He sounded hollow when I told him, not even upset. Silently. Of course it was Caleb, he said. It's always Caleb. The consequences were immediate. Riley completely cut all communication with Caleb. He dismissed my attempt to confront him once more, claiming that I was exaggerating. A few days later, my mother contacted me, her voice eerily serene. Mason, we need to talk, she remarked. About what? Still fuming over Caleb and Avery, I inquired. This weekend, we're having dinner at the house. Riley, and you should come. It's time to put this behind us. I believed I had misheard her. Move past this? Logan was deceived by Avery. His heart was broken by her. Additionally, Caleb, she gently interrupted me, saying, I know it's hard, but Caleb is still your brother. Despite his error, he is now content. Isn't that the important thing? I couldn't speak. My mother, who was meant to defend us all equally, was once again taking Caleb's side. Riley rolled her eyes as I told her about the dinner. Are you serious? She is attempting to ignore this. Normal. I didn't disagree. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to leave, not for my mother or Caleb, but for Logan. I wanted him to know that he still had support. I was afraid of what I would discover when I arrived at my parents' house on Saturday. Riley was already there, crossing her arms as she sat on the porch. She said, This is going to be a disaster. As I approached, I refrained from arguing. Caleb sat at the dining table as we entered, smiling as if he hadn't just split the family in two. Avery was also present, sitting next to him as if she were a part of the group. At the head of the table, our mother, Linda, was grinning as though nothing was amiss. Come sit, she offered with a cheerful tone. We're going to have a nice family dinner. Riley glanced at me as I gazed at her. I thought I may suffocate since the tension in the air was so heavy. However, as soon as I sat down, the catastrophe started. I was not interested in sitting at the table. To be honest, I wanted to just walk away and flip the fucking thing over. Riley and I had to speak for Logan because he wasn't present. Caleb needed to be called out. What everyone else was too cowardly to say had to be said. With a display of food so spotless that it seemed as though my mother, Linda, believed cooking could clean up this catastrophe. She stood at the head of the dinner table. She was grinning, bringing joy into the space as if she could make it material. Linda said, Let's just sit down, eat, and talk. Riley whispered to herself, I'd rather eat glass. As I glanced at her, Avery and Caleb were seated at the far end of the table. The sight of them together still made my blood boil. Avery, as if they were on a freaking date, Caleb had one arm thrown languidly over the back of her chair. However, Avery refused to look at Riley or at me. She continued to look at her dish, with her head down, as though the mashed potatoes were the most amazing thing she had ever seen. I inquired. Where's Logan? I was surprised at how piercing my voice sounded. I got one of Linda's stoic, "You're ruining this" expressions. Logan decided not to come. Riley answered, "Yeah, no kidding," while crossing her arms. Wonder why? Linda gave her a stern look but remained silent. She probably knew Riley wouldn't give up. Riley has always been the firecracker among us. Even though she is only 2 years my junior, she has never shied away from speaking her mind, particularly when it comes to Caleb. Caleb, who was buttering a roll as if he hadn't just exploded a nuclear bomb in our family, caught my attention. "So, Caleb," I replied, "you're just okay with all of this?" He gave me his angry, calm down face as he gazed up at me. God, I detested that expression. Since we were young, he had been giving it to me as if he were superior, smarter, and older. He questioned, "What do you mean by this, Mason? This?" I waved my hand at him and Avery and snapped. "Caleb, Logan's fiancé, was taken by you? The same Logan who asked you to be his best man because he trusted you enough. With this? Are you kidding me?" With a heavy sigh, Caleb put down his butter knife, acting as though I was the one who was being unreasonable. "Look, Mason, this wasn't planned by Avery and me. And I know it's complicated. It just happened. Things just happened." Riley leaned forward in her chair and scoffed. "Is that your justification? You don't just happen to start dating your brother's fiancé?" Riley's comments made Caleb cringe, but he didn't raise his head. I was hoping she would stand up for herself and say something, but she just sat there and let Caleb speak. At last, displaying his aggravation, Caleb combed through his hair. "I won't just sit here and watch the two of you attack us. I have been open and honest with Avery. We're content together and don't require your blessing." "Honest?" I fired back. "You believe your treatment of Logan was sincere? You lacked the courage to tell him directly. Avery had to inform him when she decided to call off the wedding. That's enough." Across the table, Linda's voice could be heard. Mom gave me that familiar scowl of disapproval, the same one Mom used to talk back to me when I was a child. "We are not going to spend this dinner yelling at each other like children." Riley pushed her dish away and said, "Then maybe Caleb shouldn't have acted like one." Linda replied, "Riley, please," in a strained voice. "This isn't beneficial. The reason Caleb and Avery are here is to continue their family's journey. We must all extend forgiveness and move on from this. Forgive and let this go." Unable to believe what I was hearing, I gazed at her. "So, you're just okay with this?" Slowly, I asked. "You're okay with what Caleb did to Logan?" Linda's expression softened, as though she were addressing a young kid who was just unable to comprehend the world. "Life is complex, Mason. Despite their mistakes, people should have the opportunity to be happy." "Happy?" Riley's fist slammed on the table as she burst. "Logan is wretched, Mom. You're behaving as if none of this is important. You're here acting like a hostess, like it's Thanksgiving dinner, after Caleb made him feel embarrassed." With his chair scuffing the wooden floor, Caleb got to his feet. "You know what? I don't have to sit here and have my home attacked. I've finished our talk," I yelled. "Sit down," in a low, menacing voice that even surprised me. I was so tired of Caleb walking away from everything. Responsibility, consequences. "Logan, you don't get to walk in here with Avery like nothing happened, and then act like we're the problem." At last, Avery raised her voice, but it was tremulous and quiet. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I turned to her, and so did Riley. I questioned, my rage mixed with incredulity. "Then why did it?" Avery seemed to be waiting for approval before speaking as she glanced at Caleb. She inhaled deeply when he remained silent. "Caleb and we started talking months ago. At first, it was innocent, but," she paused, "he told me things about Logan. Things that made me doubt everything." "What things?" asked Riley. Avery stumbled over her words. He said Logan didn't really love me, that he was just going through the motions because he felt like he had to settle down. Caleb. I froze as everything came together. For months, Caleb had been sowing doubt in Avery's mind. That was his personality. Attractive, cunning, and self-centered. Riley responded, "You've got to be kidding me," in a disgusted tone. "You let Caleb convince you Logan didn't love you?" "Logan adored you, Avery." Everyone could see it. Avery winced, but Caleb moved ahead of her while speaking in a chilly tone. "We're not going to sit here and let you two attack Avery. This conversation is over." "Fine," I responded as I got to my feet. "Then I guess I'll have this conversation with Logan instead. I'm sure he'll love hearing how his own brother was working behind the scenes to sabotage his relationship." Linda began. "Mason." But I interrupted her. I turned and left, Riley following closely after me. "Logan deserves better than this, Mom. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you." Riley released a breath that she had obviously been holding as soon as the front door closed behind us. She mumbled, "Unbelievable. Caleb's not even sorry. He believes his own lies." I didn't respond. What Avery had revealed about Caleb getting into her head and manipulating her emotions had my head spinning. This was no fortuitous romance. For some reason, Linda was ignoring the fact that Caleb had been planning this for months. Riley turned to face me as we entered her vehicle and said, "We have to tell Logan." "I know," I replied, "but I don't think this ends here." And I was correct. It didn't. Riley's engine hummed through the peaceful ride to Logan's place. She remained silent, and I did too. The identical thought was running through both of our minds. How in the heck were we going to explain this to Logan? Avery calling off the wedding was one thing. But what about knowing that Caleb had been deceiving her for months? That seemed like a completely different animal. I kind of thought Logan wouldn't respond when we arrived at his house. With the exception of the occasional text, he had remained a phantom ever since the split. However, the door slowly opened, revealing Logan staring at us with black circles under his eyes. He appeared slimmer, as if he hadn't eaten. He said, "Hey," in a low voice. "Didn't think I'd see you guys tonight," I said. "Can we come in?" After a moment of hesitation, Logan moved aside to allow us to enter. The flat appeared as worn out as he was. The curtains were drawn. His couch appeared to be his bed these days, and takeout containers were piled on a coffee table. Logan laughed without laughter when he saw that I was staring. "Yeah, I know it's a mess." "Take a seat," he said, sweeping papers from the cushions and pointing to the couch. Logan remained standing, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, while Riley and I sat. He appeared protective, as though he was aware that we weren't just stopping by. "What's up?" he finally inquired, his gaze darting between us. Riley didn't hold out. "Logan, we need to tell you something about Caleb." Logan stiffened as soon as she spoke Caleb's name. His eyes widened and his jaw tensed. "I don't want to talk about him," I whispered. "You need to hear this. It's about what really happened with Avery." Her name made Logan cringe. I thought he was going to throw us out, but he sat down in the armchair across from us after letting out a trembling breath. "Fine," he replied. "Say whatever you came here to say." I didn't mince words. Despite the pain, Logan deserved to know the truth. Avery told us tonight that Caleb had been talking to her for months. He told her things that made her believe you didn't really love her. At first, Logan's expression remained unchanged. He remained motionless as he gazed at me. He gently averted his gaze and squeezed his fists against his thighs, but I wasn't even positive he had heard me. He spoke the words, so Caleb convinced her to leave me in a whispery tone. "Manipulated her," said Riley again. "He played with her head." "Logan," she stated, "she thought you were just settling for her because Caleb got in her ear." Logan gave a sour laugh, but it was devoid of humor. "Of course he did. That's Caleb. He's always been good at taking things that don't belong to him. I was astonished by the hostility in his voice. Logan has consistently maintained our family's composure. Logan is the quiet anchor if Riley is the firework, and I am the middle child who is always caught in the between. He is not angry. He simply becomes depressed. Now, though, he now had an angry expression. He's done this before, Logan stated abruptly as he looked at the ground. Riley said, "What do you mean?" Logan's expression darkened as he looked up. "Do you honestly believe that this is the first time Caleb has taken anything that was rightfully mine? Do you recall my senior school soccer tryout?" Logan inquired. While attempting to piece things together, I scowled and said, "Yeah, you didn't make the team." "No, I did," Logan said with a sour smile. Caleb persuaded the coach that he would be a better option and that I was unreliable, even though I made the squad. It took me years to find out. While Caleb made varsity, I was dismissed. "What?" Riley's eyes widened. "Why didn't you say anything, Logan?" "Because nobody would have believed me." He shrugged, adding, "Caleb has always been the one. The golden boy is Caleb. Caleb is impervious to error." After hearing this, something clicked in my mind. Caleb had been our mother's world for years, charming, ambitious, and self-assured. Everything an ideal oldest son should be. However, now that the cracks were showing, it became clear that he didn't just take things because he wanted them. He did it to win, to show that he was superior to the rest of us. "Logan," I continued slowly, "what do you suppose caused him to do this to Avery now?" Logan gave me a dumbfounded look and said, "Because he could. I've always made Caleb envious. It's not over. He does a good job of hiding it. Like he's taken everything else, I believe he decided to take away Avery after realizing how happy I was with her." Logan was right. This wasn't just about Avery. It was about Caleb needing to repeatedly demonstrate that he was the best, regardless of who he injured along the way. There was a brief period of silence. Riley appeared to want to punch a wall, and I felt sick to my stomach. Logan wiped his face and said, "You know what's the worst? I cherished her. I cherished her dearly. I also had faith in Caleb. I assumed he was pleased with me." I muttered, "I'm sorry," since I had no idea what else to say, and it seemed so hollow. "You don't have to apologize to me," Logan said, shaking his head. "Please let me know what you plan to do about it." Riley grimaced. "What are you saying?" Logan's voice was harsh as he stated. "I mean, Caleb isn't done? You think he's simply going to stop after this? Mom is already on his side. I'm the bad one for not letting it go, but he'll keep making things up until the rest of the family forgives him. He acts in that manner." Riley and I looked at each other, and Logan was right. I hate to say it, but our mother was already setting the stage for us to go over this. And if we didn't do something, Caleb would win as he usually does. Riley stated, "Mom needs to see what's going on, so we need to talk to her. She cannot continue to stand up for him." "Good luck with that," said Logan, snorting. "Until the day she passes away, Mom will stand up for Caleb. Your time is being wasted." Linda had always made excuses for Caleb, perhaps because he was the firstborn, or because he reminded her of herself. But whatever the reason, she had been ignoring Caleb's behavior for years, and it had finally come to this point. I didn't want to believe that, but I knew deep down that Logan wasn't wrong. One thing was clear to me as I watched my younger brother sit in his damaged apartment, though. Caleb was not going to get away with this time. I firmly stated, "This time, we're not going to let him win." After giving me a long look, Logan nodded and said, "Good, because I'm tired of being a punching bag for Caleb." I sensed a change in myself as Riley and I left Logan's apartment that evening. I was done being kind, done letting Caleb bully everyone while Linda applauded him, and it was time to face Caleb head on. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. Riley and I quickly decided what needed to happen next. Caleb needed to be confronted. Really confronted. And not just about Avery. This was about everything that Caleb had been doing for years, including manipulating people, twisting circumstances, and making himself appear like the ideal son while ignoring the rest of us. Logan was correct. Caleb wouldn't stop unless he was forced to, and we were going to force him. When Riley and I unexpectedly arrived at our parents' house the following morning, Linda opened the door, looking astonished to see us, and as though she had been up all night worrying. To be honest, good. Her grin was forced. Mason, Riley, she continued, what are you doing here? We need to talk to Caleb, I said as I walked into the living room sweeping past her. Linda groaned deeply as she shut the door, and Riley trailed behind me. This again? Can't you just, she asked, her voice already worn out. Riley interrupted, turning to stare at her saying, no, Mom, we can't. Is Caleb present? I inquired. He's upstairs, but I don't know why you, Linda said after hesitating, then nodded. Perfect, I murmured as I made my way up the stairs. Linda called after me and said, Mason, don't start anything. Linda had let Caleb for too long, and it was time for someone to do what she wouldn't do. So, I disregarded her. I didn't care what Linda thought at this point. Caleb was sitting on his bed with his laptop open when Riley and I marched up the stairs and down the hallway to his old bedroom. The door was half open, so we didn't bother knocking. And I pushed it open, his face twisted into a mixture of smugness and annoyance when he looked up and saw us. To whom am I due this distinction? Here to lecture me some more? Caleb replied, leaning back against the wall and shutting his laptop. I crossed my arms and remarked, we're here for answers, not to lecture you. I've already explained everything, Caleb said, rolling his eyes. I didn't plan this with Avery. It just happened. Why aren't you all able to accept that and go on? Because it's a lie, Riley said. Avery told us that you had been peeping into her head for months. You were ruining her friendship with Logan the entire time, Caleb. Even as Caleb's face reddened, his arrogant look persisted. So, what? Relationships are always ending. Logan's inability to retain her is not my fault. You think this is a game, don't you? I said, stiffening my fists at my sides as I walked toward him. You're not even sorry for what you did. Why would I? Logan was never right for Avery, Caleb retorted. I was kind to her. You took her. Riley screamed. You can't stand seeing other people happy, so you tricked her into leaving Logan. Watch it, Riley, Caleb said as he got to his feet, his face changing to a more icy one. You have no idea what you're discussing. I answered softly. Oh, we know precisely what we're talking about. Caleb, you've been doing this for years, stealing what belongs to Logan, undermining him, and claiming to be the golden child, while the rest of us suffer as a result. You're being dramatic. Caleb grinned. Am I? Logan told us about the soccer team, how you persuaded the coach to cut him so you could take his place. I shot back. Does that sound familiar? For a brief moment, Caleb's grin wavered, but he immediately got back to it. That was years ago. Who gives a damn? Logan is concerned. Just like you ruined this, you ruined that for him, Riley yelled. Caleb chuckled, but it was a mocking, bitter laugh. You guys are unbelievable, he said. Do you believe that I am the bad guy? Logan is pitiful. He was and always has been. He allows others to walk all over him because he is weak. Avery chose me because I'm superior to him. I didn't steal her. Riley stepped forward and poked a finger at Caleb's chest, saying, You're not better than anyone, Caleb. Even though I could feel my fury boiling. The only reason you get away with being a manipulator and a liar is because Mom allows it. Caleb snarled, Leave Mom out of this. Why? Riley retorted. We all know you're her favorite. No matter what you do, she will stand up for you. Linda suddenly materialized in the doorway. What's happening in here? With a strong voice, she demanded. Riley turned to stare at her and added, Ask your perfect son, adding that he had recently confessed to coercing Avery into leaving Logan. Linda turned to face Caleb as her face went white. Is that true? Of course not, Caleb answered softly, his voice flowing. Mom, they're misrepresenting what I said. I didn't do it. You claimed that Avery picked you because you're superior to Logan, Riley yelled. Linda's expression was unreadable as she turned to face Caleb, who gave her a wide, naive look, as he often did when he had to get out of trouble. Come on, Mom. You are familiar with me. I would never act in such a manner. For a while, I hoped that Linda would finally recognize Caleb for who he truly was. But she hesitated, and I could see the doubt in her eyes. Then, as usual, she folded. Her voice was tense as she replied, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. We're not going to solve anything by yelling. Riley laughed bitterly and said, It's unbelievable. You continue to protect him. I'm not defending anyone, Linda responded. But I'm not going to let this family fall apart over a relationship that didn't work out. This family already is falling apart, I whispered quietly. And it's because of Caleb. Caleb looked bored and shrugged, saying, Cry about it. I finished our talk. Riley snapped, No. We're done with you. What is the intended meaning of that? Caleb narrowed his brows and asked. I said, Logan's done. It means we're not letting you win this time. Riley is finished. I am too. You're by yourself. You can't just cut me out of the family, Caleb said, looking truly shaken for the first time. Watch us, replied Riley icily. Mom, you can act like Caleb is flawless all you want. But the rest of us aren't playing along anymore, I said, turning to Linda, who appeared stunned. Either you're with us or you're with him. You make the decision. Linda gave me a slap-like look and said, You can't ask me to choose. Riley remarked softly, You simply aren't aware that you've already made your decision. I believe that Caleb recognized that he had finally lost control and pushed himself too far since he didn't say anything as we were leaving. And for once, he didn't have a smug response or a lazy shrug. I was relieved as Riley and I left the house. Because although Caleb might not be facing actual repercussions today, he would eventually. People like him usually do. And I wasn't going to be there to catch him when he fell for the first time. After that altercation, we didn't hear from either Caleb or Linda for a few days. To be honest, I believe they were both waiting for us to return as we always did. Especially with Linda. In our family, things had always gone like this. Caleb made a mistake, Mom covered it up, and the rest of us had to keep our mouths shut for the sake of keeping the peace. But not this time. You have no idea how long I felt like I was screaming into a void, I added. And Logan actually appeared glad when we told him about what had transpired at the home. It's about time, he muttered, shaking his head. Riley and I had made our decision. Linda made several attempts to contact us over the course of the following week, first by phone and then by text, but each message was the same. Family doesn't behave like this, so we need to communicate. Caleb is your brother, and while I understand your anger, this has gone too far. You don't fully comprehend the story. Let's discuss this over dinner. We chose to ignore her. Riley, Logan, and I were all on the same page for the first time, and it felt liberating. Caleb was no longer our responsibility, so we didn't have to comply if Linda wanted to hold on to him. Caleb wasn't finished, though. On a Thursday night, I received a call from an unknown number. I don't typically accept such, but for some reason, I decided to answer. Hello, Mason. I remained silent for a moment, almost expecting Caleb to knock on my door, but I was still taken aback when I heard his voice. It sounded desperate, not cocky or arrogant. What are you looking for? With a flat voice, I asked. Caleb hurriedly continued. I need to talk to you. It's important. Hard pass. His voice trembled. Mason, please. And I was shocked, because Caleb demanded things instead of asking for them. I answered, against my better judgment. All right. Don't talk on the phone. In an hour, meet me at the depot, please. I didn't want to attend, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that something wasn't right. The depot was an old diner we used to frequent as kids, and it felt strangely symbolic, as if Caleb was trying to exploit some shared history to guilt me into listening. I didn't recognize Caleb for a moment when I entered the depot an hour later and saw him sitting at a booth in the corner. He had bags under his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days, and his normally flawless hair was unkempt. Caleb, what do you want? I questioned, slipping into the seat across from him. He didn't immediately respond, instead looking down at the table with his fingers tapping nervously. I messed up, he finally stated in a hushed voice. With a sour laugh, I said, yeah, no kidding. No, Mason, the first made a huge mistake. More than you thought. I had never seen Caleb this afraid, and there was something about the way he said it that made the hair on the back of my neck rise up. What are you discussing? I inquired. After inhaling deeply, Caleb shakily exhaled. I'm in trouble. Bad luck. I saw panic for the first time in his eyes as he glanced up at me. What sort of issue? With quivering fingers, Caleb ran a hand through his hair and nodded. Debt. I owe a lot of people, a lot of money. Mason, the first, made an effort to correct it, but it got out of hand. His voice broke as he trailed off. Avery, what are you saying? I asked, feeling sick to my stomach. I think I've never seen. Caleb seemed so embarrassed as he looked at me. I needed money, he said. I reasoned that, by getting to know Avery better, I might be able to persuade her to assist me. Her family is wealthy, so I reasoned that perhaps you made use of her? Startled, I cut in. You used Avery as leverage because of your debt? Despite his recoil, Caleb said, I didn't intend for it to get this far. Although I didn't anticipate her leaving Logan for me, I was unable to stop it once it got going. Caleb had not simply taken Logan's fiancée because he wanted to win. He had done it out of desperation. He had played with Avery's emotions, ruined Logan's life, and split our family apart in order to hide the catastrophe he had created for himself. I gazed at him, trying to take in what he had just said. Is Mom aware? Quietly, I inquired. No, and she can't, Caleb said, shaking his head. If she learns, I'm finally able to recognize you for who you truly are. Good, I responded sourly. She is entitled to the truth. Caleb's voice was suddenly begging. Please, Mason, I need your assistance. I have no other people. Aid you? I chuckled incredulously. Are you serious after all of your actions? Caleb said. You're my brother. Family is meant to stay together. Don't you dare pull the family card, I responded. You don't get to hide behind that after what you did to Logan. Like a drowning man pleading for a life raft. Caleb gazed at me and said, Please. Without you, I am unable to resolve this. I felt nothing for Caleb for the first time in my life. No rage or hatred, just emptiness. He was no longer my brother. He was just a man who had ruined every relationship he had ever had. I got up and said, Caleb, you need help, but it won't come from me. Caleb started to disagree, but before he could say anything more, I left. Later that night, Riley, Logan, and I convened at my place. And for once, no one was shocked when I told them all Caleb had confessed. Logan said, He's always been like this. It just took him this long to fall apart. How about Mom? Should we tell her? Riley said. After giving it some serious thought, I shook my head and said no. She's made up her mind. Let her if she wants to think Caleb is flawless. We're done with him though, alongside her. With everything. I had spent my entire life trying to keep this family together, but now I know that sometimes you have to let things fall apart. For the first time in years, I felt free. Neither Linda nor Caleb were my burden anymore. With a small smile on his lips, Logan turned to face Riley and me and said, You think we'll be all right? Yeah, I replied with a smile. We'll be all right. And I did believe it for once.